Working as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's the whole wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
That's Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Thursday, a very special Thursday because it's 09:30. We went an hour early today in light of the fact that our quarterback, Kash Patel, is going to be under fire in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee today. We're going to be weighing and measuring his ability to take the helm of the next directorship of the FBI. So we want to be here today to track with you the hearing, give you our thoughts, give you a unique perspective on it. We're not just going to sit back and let these weapons grades losers talk and monologue and pontificate and bang the lectern. We're going to interject, give our opinions as we go. And they are, as I am speaking, are convening it. We're not going to throw it to them quite yet because, again, they're weapons grade losers. There's going to be a lot of time wasted. I'm sure Chuck Grassley will look down at a document that was prepared for him by people who are 60 to 70 years younger and will not look up for a couple of minutes. So we're going to track with that. And then we'll probably join it when Kash Patel gives it his first opening remarks. And, for those who don't know, Kash Patel, our quarterback, has a pretty special relationship with the Suspendables, runs the Fight with Cash Foundation. As you see, I am representing it right here on my t-shirt. Foundation reached out to Garrett, to Kyle, to me in our time of need a couple of years ago to support us and our families. That's why, according to Dan Goldman, heir to the Levi Strauss fortune, worth millions of dollars, bought his congressional seat. That's why we were bought and paid for becoming whistleblowers, apparently, giving up, $135,000 a year jobs for a couple grand to help pay for our medical insurance around Christmas time in 2022. I don't know. Seems like a pretty bad return on investment. But today will be a pretty unique perspective. We're going to go long for obvious reasons. The hearing is not going to be a tight 60 minutes. We're hopefully going to be joined by guest Kyle Seraphin when he wraps up with the Kyle Seraphin Show, which is going right now as we speak. So happily going to get him and his perspective because it's always a good time to have Kyle come on and dominate the show. But look, as a reminder, before we get started here, if you have not already, do smash the thumbs up, follow the program. Guys, we are getting close to 4,500 followers here in Rumble, continuing to grow. We're also getting a pretty interesting look at our podcast, our audio form. I mean, we're getting over 1,000. So if you're there on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, make sure that you subscribe because we normally come Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 10:30 live, but we drop the episodes shortly after we finish recording there, and make sure that you give us a 5-star rating. So hopefully we can amplify and reach more people. It's really kind of a unique universe that we're living in, Garrett, myself, that we come on and just kind of talk to each other. We're buddies and we prepare. We want to enlighten the audience. But the fact that we were able to log in and see people in a chat on Rumble and know that close to 1,000 people are downloading our thoughts 3 times a week. I don't really know what sort of universe we're living in today. So just kind of keeping off on the screen here, I'm watching Chuck Grassley, as I told you, look down at a piece of paper and prepare for the hearing here today. A couple things I do anticipate. There will be, I'm sure, a discussion about Section 702 FISA because Lindsey Graham is there and John Cornyn. So reliable deep state apparatchiks for the Republican Party. It will be interesting to see Adam Schiff, new senator from California, have a chance to talk to Kash Patel and maybe ask him about his hit list, as it's been characterized in Government Gangsters. That's Kash Patel's memoir, his book, really excellent read, where he kind of names names of people who are part of the administrative state who try to thwart Donald Trump's first presidency, not just the Russian collusion hoax, but certainly Adam Schiff was a huge part of that. So they're going to actually get a chance to go head to head. Mazie Hirono will be there. I don't know if she's going to ask Kash to, marry her or if he's interested in getting a drink afterwards. That'll be interesting. And then we'll, of course, get Senator Kennedy, who will give us a colloquialism and sound like a good old-fashioned Southern gentleman. And I'm sure we'll all just be kind of at that point looking forward to Mike Lee to give us a nice reprieve, a couple of minutes to talk about the Constitution. But who knows where it'll all go. My anticipation, though, for today is that the Democrats are going to let Kash Patel speak as little as possible. They will just use this as an opportunity to scream about Donald Trump and an FBI whistleblower who was talking about protocols that Kash Patel allegedly, according to this whistleblower, violated 5 years ago when he was not part of the FBI. And other than that, let's let Kash be Kash. The guy's charismatic. And I think he is really good on camera. And I think he'll do really well in the rare moments that he gets a chance to talk, the biggest of which is going to be when he gets his opening statement, which hopefully should be in the next few minutes. But Garrett's here. Let's get his real quick thoughts before we turn it over to Kash. And of course, guys, we're going to interject because it's going to be mystery science theater here, because that's what the American radicals do. We like to talk over these, like as I've characterized them, Garrett, weapons grade losers who call themselves our duly elected officials.
Yes, they absolutely are. I figured I might as well start with words from Kash Patel himself today. The FBI is now the prime functionary of the deep state. The politicized leadership at the very top has turned it into a tool of surveillance and suppression of American citizens. That to me is what this is about. That comes from his book, Government Gangsters. And that is why Donald Trump plugged Kash Patel to lead the FBI, is because Kash, and I think like many from Trump's previous administration, and I think like many Americans, sees through the lies, sees through the weaponization, sees through this charade that he's about to go through. And that's what this is. That's what this is. You just nailed it with the Hirono types and what we're going to see. I don't know if she's in our chat yet. She's probably over on Kyle's show still, but Jen Chang, she's usually rolling around on Twitter and in our live chat, but she posted this thread. It was like a predictions thread of what's going to happen today.
Yeah, I saw this.
It was epic. I was like, yeah, that
this individual went through every single member of the Senate Judiciary and said, yeah, well, Lindsey Graham's going to mention Iran and 702 and Adam Schiff. I'm not going to mention what he's going to say. It was a really good prediction. It would have been an interesting prop bet game.
Yeah.
I do have one prop bet that I sort of circulate amongst our chat. I want to share with the audience today. The Super Bowl's coming up. There's going to be interesting sort of bets you can make in Las Vegas. Here's my interesting one. The over-under is half. So it's basically 1 or 0 is the bet. One of the suspendables gets name dropped today.
Oh yeah.
I'm taking the over. I'm thinking we're going to get a Kyle Seraphin and hopefully Kash Patel can say, I'm familiar with the name.
That would be good. One last thing for me. I don't know. I don't have the feed up, so just let me know if I need to shut up. But I'm not looking forward to this. It gives me bad memories from when we testified. The only good thing out of our testimony is I got to meet you and Marcus and Tristan and guys. There's a guy on or who was on Jim Jordan's staff who I'm grateful to have met who kept in touch. Other than that, man, not looking forward to it. But but Kash, he's an animal, and so he'll probably handle it in a different way than maybe I did. But I remember the night of our testimony, I'm wide awake in our hotel, and because maybe people don't know this, I don't know, but we ended up staying in the DC area for a few more days because the FBI wanted to interview me, and we were trying to work that out. We were basically saying, give us discovery, and sure, we'll interview with you. It's different because it wasn't criminal law, but we were saying, give us my whatever information you think you have, to me and my attorneys, and then yeah, we'll come and interview with you on Monday. They said no. They said you're going to have to FOIA that, and then many months later, they said, "Oh, even though you FOIA'd it, you can't have it." But I digress. The night, or the time we spent in DC, the night of our testimony, I'm laying in bed. Everybody else is asleep because me and my whole family went, and I can't fall asleep. All sorts of things spinning in my head. And back then, this is forever ago now. I had only been suspended for 8 months. It's 29 at this point. And I was thinking, oh, maybe things are going to change. Maybe things are going to change now. Well, obviously they didn't. But I was laying in bed and I watched the replay of Kyle's coverage, because him and Tracy Beans, another friend of the Suspendables, covered our hearing. And it was comforting to hear friendly voices interject and overlap and overlay from that day, because laying in my bed wide awake that night after having done it all was very different than being there in person. But I don't envy Cash for this. But another thing people should recognize is that Cash doesn't have to do this. He doesn't have to be in government. He doesn't have to go to the FBI. He's done well enough in his life, and he doesn't have to be in the public, but he's doing it because he knows what this nation can and should be. He knows it's not going to be perfect ever, but he wants to do his part as a second generation immigrant. And they, make no mistake, they are going to attack him, but then they're going to go and talk about diversity and inclusion and all this crap. And he's the only person in history to potentially run the FBI that isn't a white male. But they're going to attack him because, oh, he's a Trump acolyte.
He's the Indian face of white supremacy. Maybe we'll get that from Mazie Hirona today.
Yeah.
We're also going to get Chuck Grassley is still talking, by the
Oh,
way.
Chuck.
And it's a
Oh,
little different in the
oh.
Senate. I don't know the rules for the hearings. I know for us, it was 5 minutes that each member got a chance to question. I think the Senate does 7 minutes sometimes. I don't know if it's the same for confirmation. So we maybe get longer, sort of I don't know, convoluted monologues that come from these guys. Because there's fewer members, but I believe there are 22 members of the Senate
Oh,
Judiciary
boy.
Committee, and goodness knows they're all going to want to get their time in the
Yep.
spotlight. But I mean, just before, as we're waiting here, I think it'd be worth just reflecting a little bit, having been in the seat sort of the way that Cash is right now, on some of the little like things that people don't know about. We've talked about it a little bit, but I think it's worth diving back into. The 5-minute timer that's in front of you, I actually really liked, because no matter who was up there, I had that chance to just glance on down and know whatever they said about me, or however they sort of portray me. I just had to take it for 300 seconds, and then we were going to move on. I mean, and they were super concerned that you specifically, Garrett, because I'd been a little bit more outspoken and in the media space. So I figured they were going to go pretty hard about you. They were worried that you were going to go full on Cro-Magnon man and flip the tables over and try to, I don't know, throttle Dan Goldman. But I think you kind of put that to rest pretty quickly.
Yeah, they didn't know what they were in for, which you would think they would have. Here's another little inside
It's hubris, man. It's
Yeah,
hubris. They've
yeah.
been told that they're the smartest person in every room that they're in.
Mhm.
They don't read books. They have staffers ghostwrite books for them so that they can
Yeah.
buy them with their own campaign funds.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
Matt Gates
So
explained to me while we were in recess.
funny. That's hilarious because that is what they do, and then they got a box of them that a staffer holds on to that they hand out at the state fair. But it's weird now that it's starting to just kind of genuflect back out, I guess, after being suppressed after all these months. But uh, that timer, I enjoyed it as well, because it's like, all right, just get through this, and then maybe you'll get a chance to respond a little bit, maybe not. And whatever. Just
Do you remember the photographers that were like hiding on the
yeah.
floor in front of us?
In the beginning, and I was like, "What the heck is this?" And then maybe it shows some of my ignorance because I didn't think that was gonna get that much cover. I know they're all, put on C-SPAN and then on C-SPAN's
Yeah, for
YouTube
you and
page.
us, it was like, oh, this is our Super Bowl, but really, I mean, like other
Yeah,
than my parents, who's gonna watch this?
right. I seriously thought, "Okay, we're gonna go to DC. We'll try to make a little trip out of it," because we had already planned on being there a couple days because we hadn't heard back from the FBI. And which also, everyone, just remember, nothing they do is coincidental. They wanted to interview me on May 19th of 2023. Our testimony was May 18th of 2023. And so when I forwarded that on to my attorneys, they called me. One of them called me and he was like, I don't think that's a good idea. It's ultimately it's up to you. And I was like, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. And he's like, okay, good. Okay, good. And he's like, because that's the day after your hearing. So obviously they know that you're testifying. Somebody must have told them because I got this email probably 2 weeks, roughly, at least a week. But I want to say it was around 2 weeks ahead of time. And he was like, yeah, they're just trying to mess with you at this point. And so think of that again, everybody, from a weaponization standpoint, from a government standpoint, from an alleged land of the free standpoint. They're trying to mess with you. They know you're going to testify in front of Congress and they want to mess with you. So if they're going to do that to their own employee, what do you think they're going to do to you? What do you think they're going to try to do to somebody like Kash Patel? Which I know Steve mentioned his. I got mine right here too. A fight with Kash, and I'm unabashed about it because there's been very, 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 very few people like Kash Patel. The first time I talked to him, he said, "I don't want to hear what you whistle about. Maybe someday, many moons from now, we can talk about that. We never have. He's never asked." But he said, I heard from another whistleblower that you were suspended by the FBI, and he knew a little bit. I heard you were in the middle of a transfer. Do you have a place to live? I've got this 501c3 foundation, and you're the exact type of person we want to help. And I know Steve touched on it too. And then we were attacked for it. He was attacked for it. The foundation was attacked for it. And
You can't do good things for people.
right,
That's
right.
got to come from the government, right? That's
Hmm.
the perspective of the communist left that is going to hopefully, from their perspective, they're going to hope to try to tarnish him in some way or another. I really don't think they're going to get a glove on him. There's not very much. And he's also a guy who's experienced with speaking on camera. I don't think the moment will be too big for him, unlike somebody else who maybe might be sort of a policy wonk and get wrapped around the axle and get flummoxed or something like that. I think it'll be interesting to see if they go really hard and start screaming at Kash Patel, if he's certainly equipped to do that. He's also a litigator, so he's used to that pugilistic interactions that can go on there. I think he'll do really well. And as an aside, Chuck Grassley is still talking. This is we, this is going to be a 9-hour affair here, Garrett. But back to being in the room. Do you remember the water bottle situation? Like, we're talking about like little things here that people don't know.
You know
So
what? I think we didn't plan this because folks, it's the American Radicals podcast. We just let the Holy Spirit guide us, okay? But I do remember this, and yes, take it away, Steve. This is good. This is actually well, maybe I'm wrong. Let us know in the chat right now. Let us know if you like this type of thing. Because me, from a listener perspective, I'd be like, this is really interesting. But then it's like, oh yeah, but I was there.
these are the dog and pony show tricks that they have. And we've talked like the camera angles where they make the room look really full and it's not really full. I mean, there was actually a pretty sizable gallery behind us while we were talking. But as far as the members go, most of them weren't in the room at the same time. They were there for the very beginning and then they would walk out and I'm sure they were doing other things like, I don't know, talking to lobbyists. But when their time came, they had a staffer sit in the back of the room, I'm sure, and text them and say, hey, come on in. And you get a water bottle, which kind of stunk because we downed our water bottles within the first like 30 minutes of
Oh
being
yeah,
there.
one water bottle was nowhere near enough for Cro-Magnon man over here.
But the member comes in, probably 5 minutes before it's their turn to speak. And they crack open that water bottle and they down, I don't know, at least a third of it. And then they put it down to create the illusion that they've been there the entire time sipping on their water. So when their time on camera is there, you don't see a fresh bottle that hasn't been cracked. Like, they are that into the minutia of appearances. It is all bread and circuses for the most part, which is sort of one of the most frustrating things. You and I were on Jesse Kelly's show yesterday, sort of anticipating Kash Patel's appearance, and this can be completely done behind closed doors if they were going to do a true vetting, right? I think the American people would want to see a presentation of the person. I think that's fair to have. But as far as actually getting into the details of what your real questions are for a candidate for a particular office, there's nothing stopping Kash Patel from saying, and the Republicans, since they have control, from saying, hey, if you have questions, submit them in writing. You can make them public. He will provide public responses to those. But that's not what this is about. And because the Republicans are actually in control here, they are the ones who are putting up the bread and circuses. They are putting these guys out, guys and gals. You get the Pam Bondis and the Kristi Noems. So men and women out there for television. They don't have to. They could say, we provided advice and consent. We vote for it right away. The entire cabinet's through. They could do this before lunch today. But instead, they want to have the hearings because this is their Super Bowl, right? This is their chance to get out there, get, I don't know, have you looked at a watch now? Chuck Grassley's been talking for 20 minutes. Chance to get on camera.
What is he bloviating about? I mean, come on, Chuck. Give it a rest.
I mean, at this point, I'm kind of interested just to see if Kash Patel is awake. Chuck Grassley is, look, I'll throw it up. We've been bloviating enough. Let's throw this up and give it a little flavor of what the
let me throw one thing in here. I'm gonna do this here.
And is covering
2020 election for partisan purposes. These emails and documents substantiate my July 2022 letter, which the FBI ignored. And I hope you, when you get there, won't ignore my letters. Partisan FBI agents and DOJ officials tried and ultimately succeeded in launching a full field criminal investigation and prosecution of the President of the United States. Justice Department and FBI leadership acted in concert to further a political scheme to take down Trump, just like they did with Crossfire Hurricane. They have yet to learn a lesson, and I hope you'll learn that lesson for them or teach that lesson.
He hopes that they learn the lesson that Kash Patel wasn't at the FBI to be participant. I understand he's setting up a premise of they're really bad, Kash. We need you to get in there.
Yeah. Hey, Chuck, I wrote a book called Government Gangsters. All right. I helped blow the lid off of Russiagate. Okay. I think I have an idea about how bad they are.
Man, the staffers, they must have devoted untold hours into writing this because he's not a very fast speaker, but at the same time, if you've been going for 25 minutes reading this, not talking off the top of your head like you and I do, that's a lot of writing. That's a term paper or 3. Yeah. And you can see the staffers behind him doing the Kelsey move where they're like listening to if he goes off script. Chuck Grassley's not going off script. No, he's very very much reliant. Yeah, I mean, the guy's over 90 years old now. Has declared that he intends to run for re-election.
Dude, I will. I don't care who it is. I don't care what party. I will say it for both. We have got to stop electing kings and queens who stay in power for decades and decades and decades.
A little inside baseball about Iowa politics. I did live there for 7 years. And
working on the res.
I did. Well, that was a Nebraska res, but I lived in Iowa. Okay. So Chuck Grassley was my senator, very much the way that Mitch McConnell was your senator for a time, Garrett.
Awful.
The politics work that the Speaker of the House in Iowa is Grassley's grandson. And the expectation that he had was that he would win re-election and then step down, and then they would appoint his grandson. And then his grandson would really basically never have to run opposed again because of name ID, and he would do the 99 county tour that Chuck Grassley infamously does every single election cycle, and just would be in the family name. And Kim Reynolds is the governor of Iowa. She does not like Chuck Grassley grandson. So Chuck's between a rock and a hard place because if he resigns, his grandson isn't getting the position as long
Yep.
as Kim Reynolds is the governor, and Chuck Grassley is not buying any green bananas. So he's clinging on to power, and I think that a lot of these guys draw their life force from that power. And I
Yep.
mean, look, this is a life is terminal, right? It's the only illness that's terminal, and it's sexually transmitted. um, and he's definitely clinging to. I guess he's going to hope to outlast Kim Reynolds. All right, we've now moved on to Dick Durbin,
Oh boy.
who's going to push his glasses down his nose,
Yes,
so
he
he
is.
can look down his nose at you, Dick Durbin, who I submitted a protected whistleblower disclosure to.
You partisan hack.
I tried, and never received a response though from his
No,
office.
of course not.
So let's
Isaiah,
throw old Dick.
Isaiah 6:8, Steve. Isaiah 6:8. Whom shall I send and who will go for us? Then I said, here am I, send me. Got to get
And
that in.
Dick said, "Send me."
And as a result, quote, groups and individuals have been assaulted, repressed, harassed, and disrupted because of their political views,
Wow, he's talking about Jay
social
Sitzer?
beliefs, and their lifestyles.
Oh, guess
And
not.
quote, the intelligence agencies have served the political and personal objectives of presidents and other high officials. The Hoover era of the FBI, the Watergate scandal, and the findings of the Church Committee highlighted the risk of political interference in FBI investigations
Okay.
and led to significant, important reform. In 1976, Congress passed a law that
been
limits
50
the
years,
FBI
buddy.
director to a single term of 10 years, which was intended to insulate that position from political influence. And critically, we made the FBI director's appointment subject to the advice and consent of the Senate. That's why we're here today. Since 1935, the motto of the FBI has been fidelity, bravery, integrity.
All right, let's pause old Dick Durbin there
They fail
because
at every one.
they failed at every one. There was serious discussion in the last couple of years before they suspended me indefinitely forever for the end of days about changing that motto. I don't know if that reached your circles. It reached mine that they wanted to, and fidelity, bravery, integrity. It's because it's FBI, right? They're very creative.
Hmm.
They wanted to make it fidelity, bravery, integrity, diversity. I can't believe they didn't get it through.
I'm surprised they didn't either. But FBID, FBID. Hey,
Forbid-
I'm from the FBI, but we go by FBID around here.
Mhm.
Why? Well, because we like the D so much because we're all gay.
Well, Dick likes the D. As long as we're on that, and this is sort of separate from what we're going to be covering, but I'm not really interested in what Dick Durbin's talking about, the history of the FBI. Like,
I know. What do
we
you
covered that enough. We talked about Hoover, and
If you
I
want to
think
know
that,
about the church committee, go read my Substack, would you?
and if Hoover was really a tranny, do you think the FBI would hide that nowadays?
I doubt it. Wouldn't they praise it and say somebody with as much power as J. Edgar Hoover was still afraid and ashamed to admit his trannyhood?
Let's cover this one because I did get a kick out. I got it received yesterday. As we're talking about diversity being on the way out for the FBI because of the DEI executive order. Now that they're altering and amending the core values of the FBI, where rigorous obedience to the Constitution was at the top, it got put to the bottom, was behind diversity, but now diversity's got to go. So, got this one revealed to me yesterday. For those who are listening, I'll describe it. This is a maintenance worker at the FBI Academy who's painting over the wall of not a grammar school, not a middle school. That's the sort of decorations you would expect from that level of education. That's the FBI Academy, the premier law enforcement agency's premier law enforcement academy, where they've put up the core values in I don't know, scrupulous detail and bright colors, all different font sizes, diversity prominently displayed there. It's being painted over. So here's to some progress here. I was happy to get that. I've actually had a couple media outlets reach out to me and say, "Is that legit? Is that real?" That's Quantico, man.
Yes, it is. I remember walking in that hallway, Steve. But I got one. I put it out there. A picture at Hoover. It's a picture of a picture because it's hanging on a wall there of a bunch of FBI people holding a pride flag. So there's still some resistance, of course, that's to be expected. I see Dick Durbin talking about government gangsters now. Of course, he got that in early. But
You shared this picture that's still hanging in Hoover, where there's a significant number of FBI personnel that are rocking the pride flag.
Yep.
I did notice, however, I don't know if you saw this, that the flag is upside down.
I wouldn't have known if you wouldn't have pointed that out to me. What to me, I was like, oh,
Were they
that's perfect.
posing in distress?
Yeah.
Were they blinking to you that we're really opposing this?
You know
Like
what
all the people that are sending me messages now in the last 48 hours.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, a
we've been following you since the beginning.
Uh-huh. I think it's virtue signaling. They didn't know because they don't care, but oh, I gotta act like I support my gay colleagues because I don't know why. They don't act like they support me for being straight. So I always looked at it like this: just treat people like people. I think I've talked about it before. A friend of mine at the police department, lesbian, and I have no qualms about calling her my friend. We shared a tear or two. What near one of my last days, and that's because we were friends, and I love her. I mean, as a the brother or the friendship type of love, and I think everybody can understand that to some degree. I think cops, soldiers, maybe to a little bit of a different degree, and that doesn't so. And then I had a colleague in the FBI who was gay, who he had my family over to his house a couple times because he lived nearby. He was from the area originally. He'd throw some parties. He was open about it. He because I'm open about my faith. And he actually was the son of a pastor, so I'm sure he knew where I stood from a biblical worldview on that. And like I've said many times, sin is sin. All of it is bad. Mine is equally as bad. Living in sin is bad. And homosexuality is explicitly listed time and time again. So why don't you just treat people how you would want to be treated? The golden rule, which where does that come from? That comes from the book of Matthew. Oh, go figure. And but
Hey, look, separation of church and state, Garrett. The biggest problem is, do you dig dudes? Because you can't do this job unless the requisite number of men want to have sex with men.
other men.
That is necessary for federal law enforcement.
Right.
That needs to be prioritized.
And that's
that needs to be a discussion, right?
Yes.
Which is crazy when you actually have a objective consideration about something like that. About we got to talk about gay pride all the time. We're putting giant poster boards up behind Dick Durbin, by the way, from Government Gangsters. But the conversation that you have to have, that is forbidden to have, right? If you and I were just, I don't know, we were devolving into the most base locker room talk within the office, which is heard of within law enforcement. We'll say that, right? And we were just talking about our latest conquests at the bar the other night where we were with these honeys, right? And a colleague of ours, a female, overheard that and was maybe put off by that, and justifiably so. It's a little bit crass. That's could be construed as sexual harassment. She could say, look, I overheard this conversation. It didn't involve me. And that's how broad sexual harassment is. It made me feel uncomfortable. You and I could be disciplined for that, having that conversation within the work settings. There's no place for that conversation in the work setting. However,
if you
and I were talking about how we went to the Playgirl strip show the other day, or maybe there was the 9-year-old who was doing the tranny performance, and that was just empowering. That would be not just permitted, that would be encouraged. I mean, I know I'm getting close to the edge of the hypocrisy thing, but how about we just don't talk about any of that stuff, right?
Right. Just leave it. Just you go be gay if you want to be gay. Okay.
Look,
I mean,
the Flintstones were cool with it. And that was like back in the day when you had Leave It to Beaver. Have a gay old time. Just fine. But make sure you're arresting bad guys and not talking about that at all. They are putting up poster boards now of January 6th.
Oh, boy.
Because Kash Patel apparently was integral in January 6th.
Okay, yeah. The president that you supported, blah, blah, blah.
I keep, all right, well, look, I gotta, if I have to suffer and watch out of the corner of my eye, I'm gonna make the audience for at least a second.
That's why we're here.
Officers, quote, "You're going to die, get out of the way."
Oh.
Sandlin shoved officers when they tried to lock the doors to the Senate gallery.
That's the
After
guy who
reaching the
smoked the
Capitol,
joint
James
inside the
McGrew
rotunda.
struck an officer and lunged for his baton. McGrew also threw a wooden handrail with metal
I-
brackets at
What does this
officers.
have to do
Yeah.
with
I,
Cash
I
Patel?
I
wanna
don't
read
think that this
a
is going to
sentence
land
from
real
this
well
book
because they're all
on
pardoned
the January
because of how
6th
weaponized
experience.
Dick Durbin's
Just to
side
give
He's
you an
is.
going to
idea
read
of
an
Mr.
excerpt from
Patel's
Government
take
Gangsters.
on
Oh,
what he
great!
calls
I got
a
it.
haphazard
bookmark.
riot. By everything we could see, the crowd at the Capitol was unarmed or armed only with non-lethal objects like bottles, flagpoles, or bike racks.
Accurate.
Yeah, from what he could see.
Mr. Patel has also peddled conspiracy theories for his own financial benefit, promoting a line of dietary
I
supplements
like the
that claim to
staffer
help
holding up the
people
billboard.
detox from COVID-19 vaccines. During my time on this committee, I was fortunate to get to know and work with former FBI Director Bob Mueller. I met him a few days after 9/11. That's when he took over the FBI.
Hey, Garrett, have you ever talked to agents that were in the bureau when Robert Mueller became the director?
Yeah, they remind me of Chuck Grassley. Or
I-
Dick
I'm
Durbin
and
for that matter. If he's been in government that long too, give me a
Yes.
break.
So Bob Mueller took over the week before 9/11. So
Thanks,
you're
Bob.
talking about quarter century at least, right? Now that doesn't mean that he knew Bob Mueller. I don't know Dick Durbin. He's probably been there since before 9/11. But anyway, the conversation that I always had with agents who were long term in the FBI, and it was diametrically opposite of what the public representation was in leadership for the FBI. The public, the intellectuals, the politicians, the talking heads, they all said Louis Freeh was a disaster. Hated him. And Bob Mueller restored dignity to the FBI, competence, because he made it an intelligence agency, right? Within the FBI, though, and the anecdotes that you heard were, and look, I'm not a fan politically of Louis Freeh. He tried to get himself real close to the Biden family and get himself paid, right? But Louis Freeh was, hey, he was one of ours. He was an agent, at least for some time. He was a prosecutor. He put himself like into undercover situations with the mob. Guy carried a gun. His protective detail was one person, just like one dude. Didn't require anything. And there's stories where like, yeah, he would stop off after seeing a field office. He'd want to get his kid a souvenir from whatever city he was in, and he would just be like, guys, if anybody's been in this souvenir stand waiting on the FBI director to just randomly walk in, like it's just my bad luck. You don't need to follow me in. And he would just walk in and buy the little knickknack for his kid. Everybody really had a good view of Louis Freeh's leadership. And then Bob Mueller came in and he did the exact opposite of what Louis Freeh did. Freeh said headquarters is slashed. We're sending people back to the field to work cases. Mueller came in and said, we need to build up the bureaucracy. And he created all these postings at headquarters, made it very top heavy. And he also was not considerate of the work-life balance that, I'm not saying that we have to be like giving everybody a hug and giving into their own personal needs. That's what we have, like work from home now, which is retarded.
Not
But
anymore with that latest DO.
Bob Mueller came in and said, everybody has to go to a big city. And if you happen to get sent to a small city out of the chute, within 3 years, you have to go to a big city.
So dumb. So
And
dumb.
that created a lot of conflict. I mean, that led to divorces and families breaking up, and good people saying, hey, look, I just can't
I'm
do it.
done. Yeah.
And the story that I got from an agent was that the director came to the field office, was Mueller, and was in the elevator with him. And he said, this was in a smaller office, I believe it was in Omaha. And he said, how do you like it here? And "Oh, I love it here, sir." He says, well, you should be coming up on going your transfer to one of the big cities. Where do you want to go to? And he said, honestly, sir, I just hope it's someplace that I can afford, because he's a GS-10 at that point,
Right.
right? He's not making a ton of money.
Mhm.
And Mueller turned to him and said, and that's important to you? And then walked out of the elevator. And look, there's a certain thing to be said, like service is supposed to be paramount, but you
Yeah.
got to feed your family, right?
Right. That's
We're-
so absurd to me. And I pulled this up. This is on the FBI's website. I could share it if you want, but it's about the history, and it's post 9/11. And we this is why we talk about it all the time. And this goes back to that hubris. It says the key to that new mandate, Director Mueller knew, was intelligence, the holy grail of national security work, the ability to collect and connect the dots, to know your enemies and the threats they pose inside and out. Okay, but it's the FBI. It's the nation's premier law enforcement agency. I'm not saying our nation doesn't have a vested interest in national security work, but injecting it into the FBI like was done, well, look where it's led. And the this is when we started getting the intelligence analyst cadre, which the vast majority of them, in my experience, are very far to the left. A couple decent ones out there that I've met, but it's
Tom Tillis is speaking now. The
oh
guy who
Tom,
tried to spike Pete Hegseth
oh
is out
boy,
there, and he's got a thin blue line lapel pin on.
give me a
And before we
break.
throw it to Senator Tillis, shout out to Kennedy Finance from the chat here on Rumble. Rumble.com/AMRadPod. Make sure you guys smash the thumbs up, follow the channel. Kennedy Finance said that Bob Mueller was basically the John Kerry of FBI directors. Avow. All right. Here is Senator Tillis.
Comes out of the shadows.
JD and an international law certificate from the University College of London.
He's just reading his resume?
I'm reading from a piece
Cash
of
began
paper.
his career as a public defender in Florida, where he led or co-led more than 60 jury trials in state and federal court. Cash clearly demonstrated a devotion to upholding the rule of law and defending the rights of individuals. Cash led the defense of Jose Buitrago in United States versus Buitrago, a high-profile case in Florida in 2015. Buitrago was one of the Colombian nationals arrested in a major drug
Cash
bust
talks about this in
involving
Government Gangsters.
Operation.
Basically, the federal prosecutor had exculpatory evidence and hid it, and Cash got him acquitted on it. And he basically says, "Look, I'm not defending the guy's actions, but I'm
we
saying
have to do the right thing.
The process matters." He did the John Adams defending the redcoats sort of in this situation.
This guy should have this lapel pin on.
Cash was hired as a senior counsel on the House Permanent Select Subcommittee on Intelligence Committee, I should say, in 2017. He told me he distinctly remembers my friend Trey Gowdy comment shortly after.
Don't get me going on Trey,
Boring
dude.
discussion from weapons grade losers. Hey, if somebody was gonna read your resume off, Garrett, when we testified, if you had your pick of anybody on that committee, who do you think you would have gone with?
Matt Gaetz, for sure.
Matt Gaetz would have been good. I really like Thomas Massey. It was kind of like a nice thing to check off to get to see the debt clock thing that he had on his
Who
suit.
was that? What's his name? Former Navy SEAL, I think. He asked you some stuff. Oh, what was that guy's name? Maybe he's not a name. Maybe he wasn't a former Navy SEAL. Now I gotta go look. I gotta find it.
I would have liked to have Thomas Massey, who last night put out a thing that because he's an MIT grad, he has solar panels on his house, and he routed the energy when his batteries are full to heat up his water.
Oh, wow.
Yet we have Chuck Grassley and Dick Durbin, who are just still around. Do you think they could wire solar panels on their house to heat everything?
I don't think they could figure out how to work the remote to their TV.
We're doing Cash Bingo.
Oh, here we go.
Today.
Craig Stubbe.
I think we'll have words like enemies list and deep state. I've already X'd out 4 boxes in the opening statements alone.
Nice.
The fact of the matter is, some people will be here to simply substantiate a false narrative. At worst, they may be just going through an unfounded litany of quotes and half-truths, some of which have already been dispelled by the chairman after the opening statements.
Wow, he's got really
Chair
big
and
font.
Ranking Member, in my 10 years in the Senate, I hope I've established a reputation for being fair, doing my homework, and taking tough positions that have been met with harsh criticism. Heck, I've even been censured by my entire state and 30 counties.
I wonder why.
Well, his tough position where he told Pete Hegseth's ex-wife's sister that he would take her testimony about him being dangerous and it would spike Pete Hegseth's nomination to the Department of Defense. That's Tom Tillis. He's taken some tough positions. Hey, Tom, you could be out of a job soon if there's any justice in the world.
That for sure. This is what I think must happen. We have to have a longer memory, just a couple of years. We're not able to do that in recent history for some reason. But if you voted no, if you're a Susan Collins, a Lisa Murkowski type, and you're voting no on these nominations, especially if you just won an election, the reason you won is because people want Donald Trump and they want Donald Trump's agenda. And if you stand in the way of that, you must be primaried. You must be kicked out of your position.
He's in cycle this time around. I hope Dan Bishop runs against him. Dan Bishop was good to us.
I concur. Fully concur. Dan Bishop, one of the
Dan
few.
Bishop, Matt Gaetz were the two members that came behind closed doors to our depositions, for lack of a better term. They were transcribed interviews, and they were involved in that. And they actually, for me at least, they asked questions. Now, when it came to the public hearing, Dan Bishop didn't ask us questions. He just kind of spoke, I thought. And now they're going to swear in Kash. He's not going to make anybody else get sworn in, but just Kash. So let's, for memorialization purposes, let's give this a play.
So everybody else can lie.
Nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do, Mr. Chairman. Okay. You may proceed.
Kill it, Kash.
Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the Judiciary Committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I must start with a word of prayer for the tragic accident that befell our nation last night, where we lost civilians and service members. I pray for their families. I pray for law enforcement and military personnel, and I pray for their souls, and hopefully God will find them peace in the near future. I'd like to welcome my father, Pramod, and my mother, Anjana, who are sitting here today. They traveled here to get here from India. My sister's also here, Nisha. She also traversed the oceans just to be with me here today. It means the world that you guys are here. Jesse Krishna. I wouldn't be here today without their guidance, their unwavering support, and their relentless love. When President Trump informed me of his intention to nominate me as the director of the FBI, I was deeply honored. Sitting here today, I carry not only the dreams of my parents, but also the hopes of millions of Americans who stand for justice, fairness, and the rule of law. My commitment to these principles is deeply rooted in my family's history, which has profoundly shaped my worldview. My father fled Idi Amin's genocidal dictatorship in Uganda, where 300,000 men, women, and children were killed based on their ethnicity, just because they happen to look like me. My mother is originally from Tanzania. She studied in India, as did my dad, and they were married there. They would later emigrate to New York, as the senator pointed out, where I was born, and we were raised in a household of my father's 7 siblings, their spouses, and at least half a dozen children. That's the only way we knew how to do things at the time, in the 70s and 80s, the Indian way. But we would soon learn the American way. These values have shaped and been the driving force of my career in 16 years of government service. Protecting the rights of the Constitution is of the utmost importance to me and has been every single time I've taken that oath of office. The recent terrorist attacks in New Orleans tragically claimed the lives of 14 innocent Americans and serve as a stark reminder that our national security is at threat, both internally and externally. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Justice, where I served, play a pivotal role in securing our freedoms and our safeties for American citizens. If confirmed as the next FBI director, I will remain focused on the FBI's core mission. That is to investigate fully wherever there is a constitutional factual basis to do so, and to never make a prosecutorial decision that is solely the providence of the Department of Justice and the Attorney General. For the first 8 years after law school, I served as a public defender, first for Miami-Dade County and later for the Southern District of Florida. During that time, I represented some pretty awful human beings, charged with some pretty heinous crimes. But what I learned there was the core value that has been enshrined in me since, that due process must be provided without bias to all Americans. And if we cannot provide due process to the worst, then there can be no due process for anyone. and our constitutional republic fails. But I battled on that hill for that due process. I would later serve in the Obama Justice Department as a terrorism prosecutor in the National Security Division, where we successfully contributed to the prosecutions of terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, and others. I was honored to receive the 2017 Assistant Attorney General's Award from Loretta Lynch for my work in helping the Ugandans bring members of Al-Shabaab to justice for murdering 74 innocent people, including an American. I would also receive the Human Intelligence Award from the intelligence community for related work on that mission. My experiences at the National Security Division and would later be followed by my experiences on the National Security Council as Senior Director for Counterterrorism, and later as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence, responsible for the production, creation, and promulgation of the Presidential Daily Briefing, our nation's most sensitive classified information and secrets to protect our country. My time in the White House was preceded by my time right here in Congress as a staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, where I spearheaded the investigation that exposed serious FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, abuses by members of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That misconduct eroded the public trust in our FBI. The erosion of trust, as Chairman Grassley pointed out, is all too low today. 40% of Americans have trust in the FBI. In order to get it back, there's a twofold track, Senator. One, violent crime is exploding in this country, and we cannot afford them to allow it to run away. We must tackle violent crime. Just in 2023 alone, there was 100,000 rapes, 100,000 drug overdoses, and 17,000 homicides. The priority of the FBI, if I'm confirmed, will be to ensure that our communities are protected and safeguarded and our children have parks to play in and not needles to walk over. The way we do this, we let good cops be cops. We let law enforcement, and we provide them with the tools necessary and resources they need to get after violent crime. The second way we do this on equal track is aggressive constitutional oversight from Congress. The public trust can only be restored if there is full transparency, and I am committed to that full transparency. Members of Congress have unfortunately submitted hundreds of questions that have been unanswered by the FBI in recent times. That will not occur if I am confirmed. All appropriate requests for information will be responded to expeditiously and fully. I'm committed to working alongside the dedicated men and women of the FBI. They are warriors of justice, and I will always have their backs because they have the backs of the American people. I look forward to answering your questions, and I want to take a moment to thank my family, my friends, people who traveled here, and my entire team that has made this day possible. God bless America, and I look forward to your questions.
That's my quarterback. That's it. I mean, talking about due process, you and I have hammered on that. Making cops be cops. I think that sounds really good. They're going to get ready for the first round of questions here. And I did learn that it's not pronounced Tanzania. Tanzania?
Yeah.
I'll have to make sure that that's in my repertoire from now on. I mean, it's coming straight from the source there.
Yep.
But he didn't belabor anything. I think he's ready to just take on fire. I don't know how much fire he's going to get a chance to respond to.
No, I think that's probably the most we'll hear is what he just said. But I think he touched on some of the most important aspects of law enforcement. It's what we rail about every day or every 3 days a week here. And I'm hopeful. I'm confident that he's going to get confirmed, and he's going to have an uphill battle to fix a place like the FBI, because I've been hearing from people a lot lately, and just anecdotes, or you could call them anecdotes. They're not. The whole agency is infested to this degree, but just examples of, I don't know what you call it, Steve. It's a combination of ignorance and hubris, lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, lack of care for their chosen profession. I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you get somebody to understand the Fourth Amendment, because it's really not that hard to understand. You took constitutional law at a minimum at Quantico you did. But if it's your chosen profession, you should be enhancing your knowledge and your skill and your basically your duty belt for the cop terminology. You should be enhancing that every step along the way instead of just sitting back on your laurels and saying, well, I'm an FBI agent now, I'm good enough, or I can do whatever I want. And so, yeah, I mean, he's nailing the same type of things what we talk about. And I do think he will do his damnedest to implement that type of change. But I think it's going to be a struggle. And I hope he has strong people and capable people around him to do it.
This is the fun part about being completely live and reactive to this. I just got a message from somebody on the inside. And I'm going to quote this individual who is monitoring the hearing, who just watched Kash Patel's remarks. Quote, I'm 100% not gay, but if I totally make out with Patel. It's like he's literally saying all the bleep that good agents have been screaming about for the last 10 years, unquote. That's a good one. That's one of the good ones that's in there, who has evolved their mission set to go after where the actual danger is, who's done a bunch of different work.
That's another aspect. We dunk on the FBI all the time. Okay. If you've listened to us at least once, you know that that's the case. That being said, there are still some high caliber, high quality people who, for whatever reason, maybe they didn't have access to something that they thought worthy of bringing to Congress or whatever. But there are people there who want to do, who, like Steve Shirt says, the Cash Foundation shirt, mission first. That applies to the FBI too. And so Cash's mission is about to shift and about to change towards law enforcement in this nation. And hopefully in a way to the only people who should fear the FBI are the people who do wrong. Well, man, I haven't even read Romans 13 in a while, and that's what that says.
Another update from another person on a SWAT team who said their entire SWAT thread wants him confirmed immediately, and they're like cheering, like the video we had where Kash Patel got nominated.
Awesome.
So there's a lot of buy-in from the good men and women. Kash Patel right now responding to a question about January 6th. Let's see what he says.
Publicly and privately said there can never be a tolerance for violence against law enforcement, and anyone that commits an act of violence against law enforcement must be investigated, prosecuted, and imprisoned. And on January 6th, I said the same thing about acts against law enforcement. The Capitol Police, who I have served with, and when I was Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, rushing to the aid of the members of this committee and your colleagues to provide the National Guard was my top mission priority, not politics. And that is my love of this country to protect our laws and our way of life. And it was no different. If there's any ever corruption, I have been the first to call it out. And I will continue to call out corruption in government service because it is a privilege to serve this nation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Outside of this committee, and some people on this committee have accused you of promoting the QAnon movement. My colleagues have already asked your future boss, Mr. Bondi, many questions about this. I think it's easy to see these attacks for what they are, guilt by association. Are you a follower or promoter of QAnon?
No, Senator. In fact, I have publicly, including in the interviews provided to this committee, rejected outright QAnon baseless conspiracy theories or any other baseless conspiracy theories. They must be addressed head on with the truth, and I will continue to do.
I don't even know what QAnon is. I got to be honest. I'm kind of tired of that term. I think it was Jacob Chansley, the QAnon shaman, who made a good point about the fact, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, I think that they're separate sort of avenues of thought. There's like a Q and then there's an anon, but then the media was able to marry them together so that when you type in QAnon, you only see the media stories that are about that, which are from Washington Post, because democracy dies in darkness, and the New York Times and CBS and ABC and the like, all the legacy media, so they can paint it and spin it however they wanted. But I could be misinformed on that regard. I don't care about your fringe conspiracy theorists about how there's some insider who's named Q. Wasn't Q the guy that gave James Bond his really cool gadgets?
Yeah, Q was his boss? I don't know. I don't remember.
He was in charge of tech. And then there was a whole line of thinking that Donald Trump was really the president in 2020 through
Yes,
2024.
he still
He did a
remains.
really bad job.
Mhm.
Okay.
He caused our nation to decay just to come back and make it great again? I don't know. Doesn't add
Now
up.
they've the most proof you have that we need term limits in Congress is that the congressman came forward with a amendment that would allow Donald Trump to run again. We just need to get rid of those congressmen at this point.
Yeah, no
Right?
kidding.
But Cash continuing to talk here. He's actually getting a chance. Chuck Grassley, tired of reading.
Reach because of leaks of information about my personal status. If confirmed as FBI director, Mr. Chairman, you have my commitment that no one in this country will feel that pain.
Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I woke up this morning to National Public Radio.
Yes, you're
Had a
gay.
Item on there about what has happened to those who were given blanket
What state is
clemency
Mr. Durbin
by
from?
President
Illinois.
He's
Trump.
got, of course. He's a
One
fib.
of these individuals was a man named Matthew Huddle. Are you familiar with him?
I'm sorry, what was the last name?
He was
Matthew
killed in
Huddle.
Indiana by police.
If
the
you
other
could
day.
remind me, Senator.
Well, I was reminded again this morning, he's a man who's been found guilty of numerous crimes. The one described this morning was the
Got to make a chance.
outrageous
Take a chance here
situation where he
to thank
beat
the
his-
Kyle Seraphin Show. Just rated the program here. So, guys, for those who don't know, we're resetting. We have been covering down on Kash Patel's confirmation hearing. He gave his opening remarks, during which time he talked about his family because he's a good dude. Talked about had the importance of due process for even the worst people and a commitment to addressing the violent crime epidemic that is circulating. So, saying all the right things, and now we're having to listen to the dick from Illinois talk about, I don't know, QAnon and then J6 as they're wont to do. And we are joined by the man, the myth, the legend here, Kyle Seraphin. Thank you for joining the program today, my good friend Kyle. Where are you standing on the prop bet? The prop bet is we will get at least one suspendable name drop today.
Yeah, but whose?
Oh, it's definitely yours because you're
Inflammatory.
You're the OG. Yeah, you're very inflammatory. You wouldn't
police
swear in.
because of the president's unconditional.
And,
I'm familiar with the name.
Richard given
Yeah,
to him
familiar
as
with the
well.
name would be the
So I guess my
goal
question is this.
for all podcast features.
Was President Donald Trump wrong to give blanket clemency to the January 6 defendants?
No, he was not.
Thank you, Ranking Member. A couple of things on that. One, the power of the presidential pardon is just that, the president.
Alignment, I concede he has the authority. I'm asking, was he wrong to do it?
And as we discussed in our private meeting, Senator, I have always rejected any violence against law enforcement, and I have, including in that group, is specifically addressed any violence against law enforcement on January 6th. And I do not agree with the commutation of any sentence of any individual who committed violence against law enforcement.
So do you think that America is safer because these 1,600 people have been given an opportunity to come out of serving their sentences and live in our communities again?
Yes, because weaponized
Senator,
government.
I have not looked at all 1,600 individual cases. I have always advocated
Good answer.
for imprisoning those that cause harm to our law enforcement and civilian communities. I also believe America is not safer because President Biden's commutation of a man who murdered
Boom.
two FBI agents, Agent Kohlers and Williams' family,
Eat it.
deserve better than to have
Leonard
the
Peltier.
man at point blank range fired a shotgun into their heads and murdered them released from
It was
prison.
actually an AR,
So
but-
it goes both
but no.
ways.
Leonard Peltier was in prison for 45 years. He's 80 years old, and he
So
was
what?
already
You're gonna
sentenced to
defend
home
him?
Confinement. So he's not free, as you might have just suggested.
He killed two FBI agents.
That's
That's
true, he
unacceptable.
did, and he went to prison for it and should have. My question to you, though, is do you think America is safer
Not a good look, Dick.
because President Trump issued these pardons
Dicks
to
generally are not
1,600
good
of
looks.
these criminal defendants,
Dick likes stuff
many
like
of
this.
whom violently assaulted
Dick
our
likes
police
dicks.
in the Capitol?
You already
Senator,
said
America
this.
will be safe when we don't have 200,000 drug overdoses in 2 years. America will be safe when we
you're
don't have
not gonna answer the
50,000,
que-
50 homicides in a
So you
day.
just won't answer the question.
I
don't
am-
think
You should have
safe.
said asked and
I
answered.
don't think we're safer. Matthew Huddle was sent back. to
Matthew
Indiana.
Shuttle, Huddle, I don't even
think
know his
we're
name.
safer with Peter
He's got
Schwartz.
the
I could go
glasses
through a
on,
long
down the
list
nose.
Of individuals.
Check
Did you guys read-
on the
Did you guys read the
Members
tweet
of
thread
this
that
committee.
Yes,
all
that's
this?
the
Let me
bingo
move to another
thread.
topic,
Yeah, the bingo thread.
if I can. Tell me about your J6 choir. What is that?
Well, it's not my choir. It's simply a recording that was utilized to raise funds for families in need of nonviolent offenders.
Who sings on this recording?
I don't know, Senator.
What did you have to do with it?
Simply to raise funds to assist families of nonviolent offenders whose kids needed college education payments and whose rent needed being paid.
My understanding is that the performers on this J6 choir were the rioters who are in prison.
I'm not aware of that, sir. I didn't have anything to do with the recording.
You weren't aware of who made the recording?
No, Senator.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, prove
Did
otherwise.
you receive any money for selling copies of that music or that recording?
Absolutely not.
Okay. You do have a foundation, though, do you not?
Oh, that is
I'm
really
very proud of the Kash
by
Foundation.
whistleblowers.
$1.3 million we've given to families in need across this country, including active duty service members, police officers, putting kids in college and helping people
Yeah.
in disaster
Thank you
relief
for asking
areas
about that,
rebuild their
Senator.
homes and their communities.
Give a website. Come on, Cash.
1&0 LLC, are you familiar with that?
Sorry?
1&0 LLC?
I believe, Senator, you're referring to the LLC that one of the individuals has his private business with.
Is it part of the Kash Foundation in any way?
Only in that one of the members of the board has that LLC for his outside business.
Andrew Allis?
I believe that's his name, yes.
Yes. Do you know how much was paid to him from your charitable work?
Yes, like any other charity, we had to go out and fundraise, something I'm sure every member of this committee is familiar with.
Oops.
We use digital marketing campaigns, and I believe we paid a digital marketing company through 1&0 $250,000 to raise $500,000, which we gave away to families in need, like when hurricanes struck Florida, Texas, and North Carolina.
We will be going through the details of your foundation and the expenditures with the questions for record that the chairman has mentioned.
I look forward to
a chance to answer those under oath.
Falling flat, Dickie.
Mr. Patel, you frequently associated with and sometimes praised extremist figures with well-documented histories of racism, anti-Semitism, conspiracies, and the like. In September,
You telling this to a brown man,
you
Dick?
appeared with
Yeah.
Laura Loomer at an event promoting your book.
Loomer.
this
He's about to
morning.
get loomered.
You shared a photo of yourself and Loomer in which you held her book and she held yours. Just a few months before this event, Ms. Loomer posted on X that the September 11 terrorist attacks were, quote, an inside job. Around that time, she
Hour
accused
7.
Florida's First Lady, Casey DeSantis, of exaggerating her cancer diagnosis
Be
to
like,
gain
I've
voter
taken
sympathy.
pictures with a lot of people. It doesn't
Right.
matter about every
Republican
single thing that
colleagues
those
on this
persons
committee
think.
have
I don't know what
He's
they are.
totally doing that, not touching
One of
you
my
pose,
colleagues
too.
described her as a, quote, crazy conspiracy
hand hover.
theorist
Yep.
who regularly utters disgusting garbage.
How would you like to be the
Another
staffer
called
who has to hold that
toxic.
board in front of her face?
Given all this,
They want it.
why did you associate with Ms. Loomer?
Senator, as you can see, I took a photograph with an individual who showed up at a book event. I don't believe I'm guilty by association, and I certainly don't believe that an individual who was the first minority to serve as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence for this country is a racist in any way, and I detest any conjecture to the contrary.
Suck it,
Nicely
Dick.
done.
Familiar with the Stu Peters? Does that name ring a bell?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
Not off the top of my head.
You made 8 separate appearances on his podcast.
Tell him how many you've
Promoted
done.
outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with a prominent neo-Nazi.
He asked me questions. You want me to
There are
defend the
more
rest of his
Ted Nugent. It
podcast?
goes on, list goes on. I'm just asking, when it comes to your association with individuals, why are so many of them in this category?
Association.
My association, as you loosely define it, is by appearing in media over 1,000 times to take on people who are putting on conspiratorial theories and to devour them of their false impressions and to talk to them about the truth. That is something that I will always continue to fight for, Senator.
Senator Graham.
Oops.
Moving on. Oh, God. Iran or 702?
Both.
That's the job
702
you're
will be
for,
big,
right?
is my
He likes
prediction.
dick, too.
Have you ever been subject to racism
Hey.
as an individual?
Unfortunately, Senator, yes. I don't want to get into those details with my family here.
Oh, let's get into a few of them. Tell me about it.
Well, if you look at the record from January 6th, where I testified before that committee, because of my personal information being released by Congress, I was subjected to a direct and significant threat on my life. And I put that information in the record. I had to move. In that threat,
Go ahead.
I was called a detestable, and I'll apologize if I don't get it all right, but it's in the record, a detestable sand nigger who had no right being in this country. You should go back to where you came from. You belong with your terrorist home friends. That's what was sent to me.
Wow.
That's just a piece of it.
Do you think Chris
But
Wray
that's
got that?
nothing
Nope.
Yes.
compared to what the men and women in law enforcement face every day.
He got gay
That's why
bashing.
they have my support.
Okay. Growing up, were you subject to racism?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to be glad if this is all
Now,
Lindsey Graham talks about.
I think the reason you're here
It'll be a big win.
Yeah.
has a lot to do with your work on Crossfire Hurricane. Are you familiar with that FBI operation?
I am, Senator.
So Senator Durbin mentioned the church report and the history of abuse, but he failed to mention Crossfire Hurricane. He failed to mention the Horowitz report. Wonder why? If you're waiting for these guys over here to figure that out, you're going to die waiting. So this is the Nunes memo. You work for Mr. Nunes over on the
Sorry?
House side? David Nunes?
Sorry?
Are you familiar
Devin.
with
It's
this
Devin,
memo?
you
Yeah,
by
Devin,
the
not David.
Foreign
Cool.
Intelligence Service.
He's like, oh, I was with a
Act
David last
Yes,
night. I
Department
don't
of
know.
Justice.
Absolutely.
Did you help write this memo?
I did as a staffer.
Okay, I'm gonna put this in the record.
Thank you.
In this memo, you kind of dissected the abuses of Crossfire Hurricane, right?
I did, Senator.
And the Mueller investigation. So the Crossfire Hurricane investigators, two of them were Strzok and Page. Are you familiar with them?
I am, Senator.
Okay, it was opened up on July the 31st, 2016. And here's what Strzok said. And damn, this feels momentous because this matters. The other one did too, but that was to ensure we didn't F something up. This matters because this matters. So super glad to be on this voyage with you. That's the Page.
Didn't
And
we
Page
give them both $1
responds
million
couple
because
of months
these
later,
were deemed
He's
private
not ever
Yes.
going to be president, right?
on
talking
their
about
government
Trump.
phones?
Struck, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Is it fair to say that the people in charge of investigating Crossfire Hurricane hated Trump's guts?
Well, you don't have to take my word for it. That statement, along with the statements from the sources
Are
during that
those days
operations-
over in the FBI, you hope?
Well, if they're not, they will be.
Okay, good. You know who Carter Page was?
I do, Senator.
Do you know that the FBI secured warrants against him on 4 different occasions?
Yes, Senator.
Do you know that the information that they relied upon came from the Steele dossier?
I do.
Was it you that were able to find out that the Steele dossier was a bunch of crap?
Yes, Senator, we followed the money and we exposed the fraud that was the Steele dossier.
And the primary subsource was Ignor Danchenko, right?
That's correct, Senator.
And he was
Ignore.
actually a
It's
Russian
Igor.
national.
Whatever. Just
Guys,
make it up as you go.
Are you aware that in January
Our
he
little
told the
elected officials are
FBI
horrible.
that, let's see, what did he tell the FBI? Still had no proof to support the statements, then it was just talk. The primary subsource explained to the FBI that his information came from word of mouth and hearsay, conversations he had with friends over beers, and some of the information were statements he heard made in jest. And he told the FBI this in January
That's
of
right.
2017. And they got 2 more warrants after that.
That's correct.
Are you aware that the FBI had volumes of information
He
that
wrote
the
a
Steele
book on it. He's
dossier
aware,
was
Lindsey.
a bunch of bullshit and nobody ever told
Oh,
anybody at the top?
He's dropping
I am,
bullshit.
sir. We
now.
exposed
Or
it.
they lied about being told.
That's correct.
Senator
So are
Graham,
you
this is
aware
a
of the
family
fact
show.
that the FISA court
Yeah.
rebuked?
All right, well, I got to mute him. He dropped a bullshit and he made Kash drop an N-bomb? Wow. He must be really nervous about re-election.
He's going for the most salacious segments on the news tonight.
Kyle, before you came in, I got a message from somebody on the inside I think you'll appreciate, who watched Kash's opening statements. Quote, I'm 100% not gay, but if I was, I'd totally make out with Patel. It's like he's literally saying all the shit that good agents have been screaming about for the last 10 years.
I wonder where he got all that. Weird.
It's almost like he's got a nice little brain trust, right?
Pulling teeth.
I want to pull teeth.
Horowitz investigation, the The,
About?
The Inspector General
I just assumed that was torture
labeled
related.
this
Is that what was going on?
Horowitz was 2 years to tell everybody that it took 2 years.
fraudulent at its core, mismanaged at its core, running stop signs. At every turn, they went forward when they should have stopped. The Durham report said it was obviously politically motivated. FBI agents were telling anybody and everybody that would listen, this is not reliable, this is not trustworthy, but they plowed on. And because of
knows all
you
about
and Trey
plowing.
Gowdy and others, we now know about this. Everybody who signed the warrant under questioning by me said if they knew then what they know now, they wouldn't sign the warrant.
No, they lied.
Comey
Liar.
said that. Yates said that.
Liar.
Rosenstein said that.
Liar.
The reason you're here is because most of the public, almost every Republican believes that the FBI has been used continuously in a political fashion, ignoring evidence, making up evidence, lying to get Donald Trump. And when it came to the Hunter Biden laptop, they told every social media outlet in October 2020, oh, that's Russian disinformation. That was BS too. Right before the election, the FBI intervened to shut reporting on the Hunter laptop down as being Russian misinformation, according to Zuckerberg. Do you promise all of us those days are over at the FBI?
Yes, Senator, they are.
Are you proud of what you did to find all that?
Absolutely.
You think that's why you're here today, is to make sure that never happens again?
The American people deserve just that.
Thank you.
Senator Whitehouse.
Who belongs to like a
I
white-only
remember
country club. Let's talk about
January
racism.
6th.
He looks like it.
Colleagues running through our halls to flee
Is
the
he
mob.
cold?
Oh,
Colleagues
Hey,
shouting that
look, where's
rioters
my
should
brother
be
from
shot.
another mother?
Us
Lay off
returning to our
Sheldon.
constitutional
He's got a North
business
Face
through
fleece
hallways
under his
cleared for us by automatic weapons carrying SWAT teams.
Automatic weapons carrying
None of you.
SWAT teams.
None of us said those violent rioters should be pardoned. A Republican colleague said such pardons would be hard to believe,
So what?
even absurd. Your former colleague J.D. Vance said the violent rioters should not be pardoned. Even Jim Jordan said pardons
Wouldn't it be funny if he
would,
just was like, yeah,
and I quote,
well,
"focus
Donald Trump
on
got
all the
elected, not
people who
me,
didn't
and not you.
commit any
So
violence."
he did what he wanted.
Yep.
How many
Well,
people did
It's
Cash
like he
pardon?
campaigned
Trump
on it,
pardoned
and the American
all of
people
them.
chose it.
And there's a lesson in that. Every time you think Trump would never go that far, rethink that.
Okay, very good.
We all seem to agree that
Who wrote
violence
this?
against police is unacceptable, yet more than 600 people who physically attacked Capitol Police officers were just put back on the street, part of a 1,500-person
Can we start
personal
calling
Trump
Mr.
army,
Whitehouse
now
Steve
out there with
Martin
people who
inverse?
have proven themselves willing
funny, Steve
to
Martin?
do violence
I wanna
on
punch this
Trump's
guy.
call. In
He
only
is a
10
jerk,
days,
though.
some are already
Whoa,
back
that was a weird move.
committing crimes.
If someone
That
had thrown
woman
a
was
shoe,
freaking
he
out
would
that
Also
she'd have the
tried
poster
as a
board
committee
down.
together to address the dangers of illicit drug sales over the internet. And I assume we're all against murder for hire. But Trump also just pardoned a dark web operator sentenced to life in prison for
don't
trafficking
even
illegal
get-
drugs
don't
online
run
Ross
and
Ulbricht.
accused
2
of
life
soliciting
sentences plus 40 years for
murders
running a
for
website.
hire.
Dude.
Wow.
Those pardons,
Mr.
This used to
Whitehouse,
be
as
the,
Mr.
the
Patel
liberal
said, are a
party. This used
mistake,
to be
but
the
they are also
pro-criminal
a
party.
signal that we are entering a strange and dangerous time.
We've already been
That
in one.
is the context for today's hearing.
House White.
Warnings that the FBI could become Trump's enforcer, use the powers of law enforcement to stifle speech and dissent,
God, I hope he talks about
punish
Mar-a-Lago.
political
Gosh, I
rivals
hope that
of
nothing
either
like that
party,
ever happens.
and
We
hand
have no
out free
proof of
passes,
concept
get
of
out
the
of jail
FBI
free
going
cards
after
to violent
political
supporters
speech.
are warnings we should heed. Here are some warnings of this nominee's Trump administration colleagues. Former Attorney General Bill Barr said,
He's really
this
fat.
nominee has virtually no experience that would qualify him
And he's
to
gutless.
serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, end quote. And we would never be able to command the respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau.
Wrong.
That's for the deputy position. Former CIA Director Gina Haspel was reported threatening to resign
Good.
rather than have this nominee serve under her.
So
John Bolton,
the CIA
Trump's
that put
former
out the
national
51
security
spies who
advisor,
lies?
said,
all
I
good.
didn't think
Great
he was
job.
qualified. I was forced to hire him. Trump's deputy national security advisor, the nominee's former supervisor, said, his ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job. He's untrustworthy. And it's an absolute disgrace to even consider an individual of this nature.
Yeah. The question
That's
is
from
what were those people
Republican
elected to?
appointees who worked with him. And here's what this nominee himself has said
Oh, good. This will be the fun part.
about using his office to prosecute journalists.
Oh,
We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. We're going to come after you, whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that a correct quotation, Mr. Patel?
yes. For criminal
Senator, that's
violations
a
of law.
partial quotation.
But it's correct.
In part.
Regarding his publication of his enemies list, Mr. Patel proclaimed, the manhunt starts tomorrow, and reposted a video depicting him taking a chainsaw to
Play the
his
video.
political enemies.
Like, come on, I want to see it.
Is
Play
that
it.
you, Kash Patel, reposting that at the top of that page?
I think he needs to laugh.
Senator, I had nothing to do with the creation of that
Is
meme,
that you reposting it was my question.
and that's me at the top.
You said FBI agents were responsible for the violence on January 6th, and I quote you here, beyond a reasonable doubt. Is that what you said?
That's completely incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that.
I'll give you an opportunity in writing, but this is my time now.
Oh, and right, I'm going to say I'm going to
Inspector Attorney General
Objection, Your
investigation
Honor.
found that
It's
that was
devastating to my
false.
case.
And you said we should impeach judges who rule against Donald Trump, who are, in your words, political terrorists.
Well,
Yes.
they are. So
When this nominee tries to explain all this away, keep one thing in mind.
He won't get a chance because
He's
this is your time,
testified
Sheldon.
This is
under
his
oath
time.
before a Colorado judge
Do you think his
who
parents
presided
wanted him to get
over
his
a
ass
Trump
kicked by naming
case
him
in
Sheldon?
which he was
Yes.
a witness.
It was a
And the
preemptive
judge
move.
found, and I'm quoting here, he was not
Klobuchar
a
was
credible
looking rough.
witness. His testimony is not only illogical, but completely devoid of any evidence in the record. That's from a judge.
okay.
This is a
Thanks,
dangerous
Judge.
time, and I ask all my colleagues to consider whether these plain comments by this person and by his own Trump administration colleagues
Look at Durbin's face.
should be given a blind eye, just
He's
overlooked,
glitching out.
or whether, like the warnings of pardoning violent January 6 offenders, they're warnings to be heeded.
Oh,
There is an
Heed them.
unfathomable difference
that's a good word. Unfathomable.
between a seeming facade
It means depth that
being
cannot be
constructed
measured.
around this nominee here today and what he has actually done and said in real life when left to his own devices.
Also, I'd like to enter into the record that he has
Conduct
made at least 3 fart
shows
jokes in the last 10 years.
Character.
Fart jokes.
And if you look at history,
Does the obnoxious Rhode Island thing?
You see
where he
the
puts
danger
the H sound in front of the W. The
of
what?
security chiefs
Yes, he does. His name
in
is White
authoritarian
House.
regimes becoming the tools of political power.
Are we really doing Nazis right now?
The characteristics that they often show
How bad are they
that
campaigning right now?
vengeful,
Dude, did they not pay attention to what just happened in November?
that they are grandiose,
Grandiose.
He's
Say
got the
better.
boats whipped,
that
man.
they are
If they're
intemperate.
doing this,
Yeah.
it's done.
This
that they are
is
partisan
performative,
and blindly
obviously.
loyal,
But the best part, I guess,
and
is
that
that
they are
it is
servile.
also impotent performance.
Yeah, I'm kind of tired of listening to Sheldon.
But let's do his face. And allow me to, I need to get glasses like that and floppy hair and also a lower T count and potentially hands that are soft like butter. Maybe I could wear the glove from Mice and Men to be able to do that. Oh, Tash is talking.
Nope, they're gonna. Maybe they're gonna give him some chance to
Give him.
talk.
You can do that now if you want to.
Go to the bathroom?
Oh, good.
We're all gonna go
No,
to
he
the
didn't
bathroom.
answer his
Senator.
reply.
In the collective, All of those statements are taken out of grotesque context. And anyone that thinks my 16 years of service isn't exemplary on how I would proceed if confirmed as FBI is intentionally putting false information into the public ether and creating more public discourse. The only thing that will matter if I'm confirmed as a director of the FBI is a de-weaponized, depoliticized system of law enforcement completely devoted to rigorous obedience of the Constitution and a singular standard of justice.
Nah, my man.
It's almost like that's a core value.
Senator Carnan,
Did they bring that up yet?
I'd like
No,
to
they haven't
say
brought it
that
up.
He's teased it then,
Yep.
just now.
We've heard about the January 6th pardons. I think it's important that we remind people at the same time of some pardons by the previous administration.
Does Grassley
Thomas
do
Sanders,
anything that he
the
doesn't just read?
kidnapper who murdered a 12-year-old girl named Lexus and her mother, Swell and Roberts. Adrian Peeler, a Connecticut drug kingpin who was convicted in the death of an 8-year-old boy and his mother. Leonard Peltier, that's already been referred to, that murdered 2 FBI agents. And even Director Ray, at that time, former Director Ray, said that that shouldn't have happened. And Judge Michael Conahan, who took kickbacks for wrongly sending juveniles for profit detention centers, and Alex Saab, who laundered illicit proceeds for narcotics terrorists, Nicholas Madero, and was a key connection between Venezuela and Iran.
What is Venezuela?
5 family members.
It might be
of
like
his own family.
Tanzania,
President
as we
Biden
learned
did
from
that.
Kash.
Senator.
Welcome, Mr. Patel.
702?
Do you believe America is an exceptional nation?
It's the greatest nation.
Your family went through a lot to get here,
They sure did.
and
I
your
dislike
life
this man a
story
lot.
is, I think, a great example of
He's good at
people
teaching
pursuing
you
the
the
American
letters
dream.
of the alphabet, like F
Do you believe
stands for
what
foreign.
a large part of what makes America an exceptional nation is the rule of law?
It's that
It
we
is
let a
one of
man
the
with an
fundamental
11 head.
precepts that determines that.
And why is that?
Because without a singular application of a rule of law, we go back to the Uganda that my father fled in Idi Amin.
I believe that the 2 most important institutions in America to preserve and protect and enforce the rule of law are the FBI
No,
and the Department of Justice.
no.
And the sort of politicalization
How about like
that Senator
local law
Graham and
enforcement?
others have already talked about during the Crossfire Hurricane
Neither of those things are mentioned in the
investigation
Constitution, you
or,
clown.
project of James Comey at the FBI and the abuse of intelligence tools like Title I of Section 702
Ooh,
are a betrayal
Drink.
of
drink.
American values
Check it off.
and adherence to the rule of law. And I think your biggest task is going to be, along with Pam Bondi at the Office of the Attorney General, is to restore the rule of law to the Department of Justice and the FBI. Are you willing to do that
Absolutely.
without regard to partisan affiliation or politics?
Absolutely.
Well, I don't have any other questions.
Do you believe President Trump, as the commander-in-chief, needs access?
He's in cycle, man.
to
He's got to
all
talk.
of the lawfully available intelligence that can be collected by the American intelligence community in order to inform him so that he can make
Does he
good
know that
judgments as
702 is not collected by the
commander-in-chief
FBI? Is this
to assure
fuckhead
the
even
safety and
possibly
security
He
of
just
the
knows
American
that the
people?
F stands for
Having been
foreign.
responsible for the collection and predication and promulgation of that intelligence, I firmly believe he and every president must have it.
And so you would not support any impractical or perhaps immaterial or unworkable ways to inhibit the flow of that information to President Trump?
No, I would not.
So let me just ask you, you and I have talked about this a number of times, and this has come up before in a number of different contexts. But as I've always said, I think Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence
Drink.
Surveillance Act is the most important law that
Man, and now that they got the
Americans have never
cartels as
heard of.
foreign terrorist organizations, they're
But when
never
I
going to
was
let it go
questioning
because they're going to be able to use
my
it
fellow
to
Texan,
interdict
John
drugs.
Ratcliffe, who now has been confirmed as the director of the CIA, about this, we talked about some of the reforms that have been made to Section 702 over the years.
Yeah, it only violates the
This has
Constitution
been
like
an
a couple
ongoing
100,000 times a year.
Yeah, it's just
conversation here in
1,000 times a
Congress. People
day.
like my colleague
No
here,
warrants
Senator Lee,
required.
and others have proposed reforms, which I think have gone a
There is a
long way to
judge,
help protect
Garrett and I
the
covered it,
privacy
Kyle,
rights of
that,
American
he's
citizens.
ruled it unconstitutional.
But let me
so
just
it might
point
be
out some of
brought
the
up.
improvements that have been made
Mike
over the
Lee,
years. This is not
shaved
the
head.
same 702 that was in effect during President Trump's first terms. These are a number of things that we did together on a bipartisan basis to make sure that the balance between the national security interests of the American people and the privacy and constitutional rights of American citizens were protected. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Senator, I do.
And I think Senator Tillis, with his typical outstanding graphics, has a wonderful handout which lays all of that out.
Oh, a handout.
But one
Good.
of the things that's come up, and we've discussed this, is the idea that in order to query lawfully collected intelligence under Section 702, that somehow if a U.S. person's name is involved, that a warrant would be required. Now, you're a lawyer who's represented defendants as a public defender. You understand that what probable cause is required, what sort of evidence is required to be produced to a judge.
You ask him to argue against probable cause?
Do you
what's going
believe
on?
a warrant requirement
Ooh,
is
I
a
wanna hear
practical
this.
and workable or even a necessary element of 702?
If I may just give some context on that, Senator. Having a background not only utilizing FISA and 702 as a national security prosecutor,
Defense.
but as a civilian at JSOC and later as an intelligence official and the deputy director of national intelligence, 702 collection formulates over 45% of the presidential daily briefing that you referred to earlier.
I actually have heard it's as high as 60%,
It
but
can-
anyway,
it can-
it's a lot.
It's a lot. And the issue for me is not with FISA and 702. The issue has been those that have been in government service and abused it in the past.
Correct.
And so we must work with Congress to provide the protections necessary for American citizens. Dealing with these matters, including hostage rescue operations in real time, which we use FISA collection to find and save American hostages, having a warrant requirement to go through that information in real time is just not comportive with the requirement to protect American citizens.
That's extraterritorial.
I'm all open to
Yes,
working with Congress
outside
and
the
finding
US.
a better way forward. But right now, these improvements that you've made go a long way.
Well, and Director Ratcliffe said that he did not believe that, given the context of 702 collection, whether a foreign target communicates with a U.S. person, that there'd be sufficient evidence to go to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court or any other court to demonstrate probable cause. Do you agree with that?
You don't need
Yeah,
probable
just in
cause for
real
someone
time,
who's not a
Senator,
U.S.
excuse me,
person.
it's-
You need it
it's
when
almost
somebody is
impossible to
domestically
make that
based in the United States.
Function and
This is
serve the
dumb.
national no-fail mission.
He doesn't
I think
actually understand what 702 is.
hit the
That's
nail
what
on
Cornyn,
the
he
head
doesn't understand
to
anything.
Point out the lack of trust.
He might be
Any
drunk.
of these tools can be abused by
50-50.
people who are willing to break the law or
tried to take
abuse
guns
these
away 2
tools
years ago,
or violate the public trust.
From Texas.
Director Ratcliffe again used, I thought, a helpful analogy. I'll see if you agree with it. He said the knives in your kitchen have a very useful and beneficial purpose, but they too can be misused do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Senator.
And similarly, do you agree that
Do you agree that
tools
knives
like
can be
agree that
misused?
knives can cut?
702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act can be used appropriately to protect national security, but they can also be abused by people who are willing to cross a line they should not cross?
They're both true, and that's why we need to work together to make sure Americans have trust again in these surveillance measures that we utilize to protect our country.
Thank you.
Senator Klobuchar.
Oh, this will be
Thank you very
good.
much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, I think you know that I have great respect for the men and women of the
Eat
FBI.
salad with combs.
Their mission, fidelity, bravery, integrity. I believe they deserve a director who respects their work and sacrifices. And they deserve a director who's focused on their mission. This is not about bingo cards or games. This is not about revenge. This is about the safety of our country and the people that work.
Let's talk
in
about
the
Minneapolis,
FBI.
where we
And the FBI
failed
runs
utterly.
on facts. It runs on truth.
It burned
Truth matters. And
because
without
of a
truth, the
criminal.
whole system breaks down. You said that Donald Trump has every right to tell the world that in 2020, 2016, and every other election in between was rigged by our government because they were. Yes or no, did you say that?
I don't have that statement in front of me. But
Okay, that was from August 27th, 2023 Thrive Time show. I'll put it on the
Donald
record.
Trump has the First Amendment?
These claims made in that statement were rejected by courts, including by Republican judges. Is that correct?
I don't have enough of the facts in front of me to make that
I
assessment.
will put that statement on the record, but I think everyone in this committee, including the Republican members, knows that these statements were rejected by courts.
No,
You
they
were
just said they didn't have
asked about the
standing. It's not the
police
same.
officers in the Capitol
And they're
who
going to
testified
J6
in the January 6th
till
hearing
the
that
end of
you
the day.
accused them of lying. Is
the
that
narrative.
correct or not correct?
I don't think that's accurate.
Okay, Joe Packed podcast, March 2024. We'll put it on the record.
Man, they made these
I
staffers
was
watch
there.
every
The police
podcast he's ever been on.
officers were heroes
God,
that
you
day.
can't kill yourself.
Did you post
I like Cash, and I
on
still
your
wouldn't want to
personal
do it.
social media account in May of 2024, January 6th, never an insurrection. Cowards in uniforms exposed. They
Yes.
broke the chain of command.
I believe you're referencing a post that was shown in part earlier. I don't have it in front of me.
Sounds correct.
You posted it, and it was on your account, and we will again put that out there once more as we go on. I don't want to lose any more time on this, but every one of these,
But this-
there's a
I'm
record of
getting
it, and you
hungry. I
haven't
need to eat
answered.
my salad.
All
with
I do
a
is say
comb.
things that someone
You
wrote for me.
promoted a COVID vaccine reversal or detox supplement. One scientist said, I quote,
people need
none
it."
of these substances in any form would minimize side effects from a COVID-19 vaccine. That is preying on innocent people. Did you perform clinical trials before you made that claim?
I do not perform clinical
I
trials.
didn't make a claim.
I'm not a doctor, so no.
But you did promote this supplement and told people that it would reverse or mitigate the side effects from COVID vaccine.
Did I give people an opportunity to make an independent choice for what's best for their families? Yes.
You did that last year, correct?
I don't have it in front of me again, Senator.
Mr. Patel, the FBI tackles some of the most complex threats that we face: terrorists, hostile foreign powers, violent gangs,
They're actually not
fentanyl,
that
criminal
complicated.
organizations. Your mission, though, has been to go after people. I've looked at it. I've read this
I
stuff.
looked at it. I've read
Yes
this
or
stuff.
no?
I believe
When
your
Trump
mission.
wins, did you say this? When Trump wins
When
in
Trump
2024 and is in power in 2025, we can prosecute them, referring to Justice Department officials
Referring?
for an actual RICO statute violation, for criminally organizing the United
I would
States
totally
government
like to see
break
that
the
happen.
law
Let's
to rig
prosecute
presidential
the
elections.
color of law
Did you
violators.
say that, yes or no?
Again, Senator, you're reading a partial statement, so I'm unable to fully respond.
Okay, again, we'll put it on the record. X22 report podcast.
X22
That
report
is from, I'll give you
podcast.
the date, about
The
a year
date
ago.
that is somewhere.
Look at her
One
hair.
of the names
She
on your
really
list
is
was
like
Bill
3
Barr.
drinks in.
She's a butt.
Chairman Grassley has called him one of the most capable cabinet officials I've ever been able to vote for. Senator Graham has said, I have nothing but total respect and admiration for the
For who?
job
Bill
done
Barr?
by William Barr as
Oh, he's a fat piece of shit.
General
How about
of
I go
the
on
United
record? I'll do that.
States.
Take me.
Is Bill Barr on your list of whatever you want to call them,
Fat pieces of shit.
been referred
She doesn't want to say
as an
gangsters.
enemies list. You've called them deep state after serving his country as the Attorney General of the
He
United
served his
States.
country, and
Is
we
he
loved him,
on your
even though
list
we have a
because of
problem,
personal
because-
vendetta?
Well, it's not whatever we want to call it, Senator. With all due respect, it's not an enemies list. That is a total mischaracterization.
I asked you,
And-
I actually used the words you used for the list, which was deep state, right? That's what you put at the
It is
top.
a glossary
Against
in
the
the
Attorney
back.
General of the United States. Is it because of a
not the
personal
Attorney
vendetta that he's on the list? You're under oath.
I have no personal vendetta against Bill
Okay,
Barr.
he said about you,
He's
he
gonna
would
die
never be
really
able
soon.
to
He's fat
command
and
the
old.
respect necessary to run the day-to-day operations of the Bureau. That was actually in writing in his book. He had virtually, about you, no experience that would qualify you to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency, and that your appointment is
Why does
noted
she talk
by
like this?
Senator
What makes
Durbin as
someone
deputy
talk like that?
Repeating the
director
same
to the
3 things
FBI.
over
How
and
do
over
how do
again.
people in
Heaven over
Minnesota
his
vote
dead
for
body.
this?
Is
Garrett,
it
what are
yes
your
or no
neighbors
why
doing?
you would put him on the list of deep state as a former
They
Attorney General,
were
Trump Attorney
retarded.
General
We're
of
all
the
Are they
United
drunk?
retarded up
States
here.
Are they all
because
drunk?
he wouldn't break the law
Pretty
for
much,
Donald
yeah.
Trump. Is
Or are
that
they
why?
all Somali?
Absolutely not.
Long winters.
As you know, he
But
repeatedly
Minnesota
told the
was
president
founded
in
by a
no
bunch of
uncertain
people that
terms
landed in
that
a
he did not
temperate
see evidence
climate
of
and
fraud that
continued
would
to
have
walk
affected
till
the
it got
outcome
cold.
of the election. Did
which
you
was,
say in
yeah.
February of
We're descendants
2021 that the
of
election
Mongoloid
stuff was
retards,
never
pretty
my
much.
job and I stayed all of it all? I stayed out of that stuff.
Again, I don't know what comment you're referring to, but
Can
I'm
you
sure you're
read
reading a
all
piece
of your social media posts that I have done?
Said it
I have
on
staffers
Pushback
reading all of your
on
social
I'm
media
waiting
posts.
on the Marcus
Is it
Allen
true, though,
5,
that in
6,
December
4,
2020,
7, 8,
Dude,
you
9.
reached out to the
Steve, how
Trump
red-pilled are
Deputy
the
Attorney General
staffers
and
of
asked
Amy
him to
Klobuchar
investigate
and
a
Dick Durbin?
conspiracy theory
They're all so
claiming that
based
people
right
in
now.
Italy
Yeah,
had
they're like-
used military technology and
They're like
satellites to
homeschooling their
remotely
kids and
tamper
freaking
with
having
voting
home
machines
births.
in the U.S. and switch
Making
votes
bread.
for Trump from Trump to Biden. Is that true?
What was the date?
That was out of December of 2020.
I was chief of staff to the Department of Defense, so I don't believe that's accurate in any
Okay,
way.
that came out of testimony before Congress. I will give it to you. Have you referred to the media as the most powerful enemy of the United States that they have ever seen? Is that right?
Again, you're reading a quote. I take that you're
Speech to
reading it accurately.
CPAC 22324. You said we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens who helped Joe Biden rig the elections. We're going to come after you whether it's criminally or civilly. Is that something you said?
That's a partial statement of what I said.
Steve Bannon's podcast. You also said
they
just
made
put
them
the
watch
entire
War Room
victims
too?
Mafia chess
Wow.
score on your list. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
I don't have that in front of me.
Benny Johnson's podcast 82123. You have said that the FBI.
I think that she thinks this is a dunk.
Including today.
Can we just-
you
can we just
said
fast
it
forward to the
remains
vote?
utterly corrupt. This is an agency with
Seriously
agents
though, you know
who
what
have taken down terrorists,
these
taken
hearings
down
tell
bank
me that
robbers,
collectively
taken down crime.
Americans
And
have
you
failed.
wrote that the FBI has become so thoroughly compromised that it will remain a threat to the people unless drastic measures are taken.
That's accurate.
Do you know that under Chris Wray's leadership, he took over at a very difficult time, we all know that, appointed by President Trump.
And he hired more gays
that
than ever
the-
before.
During his tenure, the applications to the FBI has in fact tripled.
So
Do you
what?
think people would be applying to that agency, like in those
Yes.
numbers, if
Your
they
friends.
thought it was
Yes.
so corrupt?
Yes, in a down economy,
American public's trust in it is
$135,000 a
at
year.
40%. That's an all-time low.
Did you say that the FBI headquarters should be shut down and reopened as a museum of the deep state?
Yes.
It
Say
should
yes.
be.
Chairman, are we allowed to go an extra time?
Let's see, you get a second round. Before I call on Senator.
second
Lee-
Couldn't you
round.
just answer the question if he said that the FBI headquarters, where they investigate cybercrime and terrorism,
shut
should
up.
be
Chair.
shut
No, they
down and
don't.
opened as a deep state?
Hey, Mr.
As
Chair.
a museum. Did he say that the headquarters should be shut down?
You know he
Those
did.
guys
Investigate it.
deserve an answer to that question.
I
He
guess
is
it's-
asking to be head of the FBI, and he said that their headquarters should be shut down.
Mr. Chair, parliamentary inquiry.
You got anything you want to say, Mr. Patel, before I go on to Senator Lee?
Simply this. If the best attacks on me are going to be false accusations and grotesque mischaracterizations, the only thing this body is doing is defeating the credibility of the men and women at the FBI. I stood with them here in this country. In every theater of war we have, I was on the ground in service of this nation. And any accusations leveled against me that I would somehow put political bias before the Constitution are grotesquely unfair. And I will have you reminded that I have been endorsed by over 300,000 law enforcement officers to become the next director of the FBI. Let's ask them.
Mr.
Chair.
Chairman, I am quoting his own words
So
from
what?
September of 2024. It is his own words. It is not some.
Then
I
put
know,
it
but
into
you
the
are a
record.
whiner
It
and
is
you
what
lost.
Mr.
That's why
Patel
you keep saying
actually
dumb
said
shit that no one
himself.
cares about.
Facts matter.
She sounds like Merrick Garland.
She
sounds like Chris Wallace.
Minutes in the next
They all are
round
the
to
same.
say what you just said.
Okay.
Oh, so does
Same
so
And
does
as-
Chuck
Grassley.
Grassley too.
Before I call Lee.
Mr. Chair, just parliamentary inquiry, and it was
Let's do
on
it.
time. It wasn't disputing any of the debate, but I intend to keep to my 7 minutes, and I appreciate you keeping everyone to it. If we go over, can we have that decrement against the time in the second round?
Yes.
If a member goes over,
not
because that was actually 10 minutes, Mr. Chair.
I'm not sure that I want to, it's sometimes.
I just don't like being
things
unfair.
out
I don't
here,
make
just
decisions
let
that I
people
can't just read
shout
off a
and-
paper.
Somebody
get
needs to
us
tell me my
shut 'em up.
opinion.
You're a wise man, Mr. Chair.
Before we-
Thank you.
before we
Mr.
go
Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Before we go to Lee.
Mr. Chairman.
Old people are
Yes, what do you
talking
want?
slowly.
We missed the last
I
line.
love this
I guess
guy.
Kennedy said something
Mr.
like he
Chairman,
always does.
unlike Senator Tillis, I mean, if we're going to start this, I want an extra 3 minutes.
Well,
Now, my friend Senator
I'm
Klobuchar
not-
went 3 minutes.
Friend.
So,
She's not your
I
friend.
hear what you're saying is the chairman wasn't a very good chairman by not shutting her up. But I've gone through this before, and I think I know how to handle it and get
I
this
think
done.
you're a star-spangled awesome chairman. I just want to say that for the record. But if you're going to let somebody over there go 3 minutes over, I want my extra 3 minutes.
Well, let's see if it's abused by anybody else before we make that decision.
And then what we do is we cut their toes off. Let's just get real weird.
Well, I'm not going to let you abuse it.
You're a good man, Mr. Chairman.
Before I go to Lee, I want to put a record
Theater.
statement in the
Yep.
record.
That's all
This
it
is
is.
From 56
infuriating.
These are the people
former
running the
FBI
country,
agents
allegedly.
Here we go.
wrote to this committee to support this nominee. Quote, never has the FBI faced such an urgent and compelling need for comprehensive reform as it does today. Mr. Patel has proven he possesses the breadth of experience required to address these challenges. His leadership, expertise, and vision make him uniquely qualified to guide the FBI through this pivotal moment. For these reasons, we stand in full support of Kash Patel's nomination. Any objection? So ordered. Mr. Lee.
Mr. Patel, while we're talking about your awards, let's talk about the cowards in uniform comment for a moment, can we?
Please.
Would you like to tell us what that was? Put it in context, help the committee understand what that was
I will
about.
say it. Mike Lee is
Very
Lex
important.
Luthor.
Thank you, Senator. During that time on January 6th, I was serving as Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense. And days prior, we had received the authorization from the President to issue the National Guard to protect you and your colleagues. But as you know, the law requires a request before the deployment of that guard. That request did not come in until the afternoon of January 6th. Once that request came in, this unfortunately, as has been confirmed by his own testimony, I believe, the Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy, failed to immediately deploy the National Guard and instead took a break to speak to media and make personal phone calls. That endangered the safety of you and your colleagues. And if you look at the Biden Inspector General report, we at the Department of Defense authorized the fastest cold start of the National Guard since World War II and the largest occupation since the American Civil War. And the Biden Justice Department said that we, including myself, as Chief of Staff, when it came to the deployment and employment of the National Guard, acted swiftly and without undue delay.
So that's what you were talking about. And that's why you had the reference to the UCMJ. Tell us what that means.
The Uniform Code of Military Justice is for uniform officers who betray the code of justice and also act inappropriately. And I thought any delay to have the National Guard arrive on scene here must be called out, whether it was a fellow Republican or not, especially someone under my auspices running the Department of Defense.
Okay, so moments ago, when Senator Durbin displayed a chart with that quote, there was a reference in part of it to the UCMJ. That's what it was referring to.
Yes, sir.
Those were the cowards in uniform. Those people who didn't do what they were supposed to do, and a lot of people were put in danger as a result.
That's correct, Senator.
Okay, thank you. That's very good to know. I do find it significant that we've heard all kinds of aspersions cast in your direction by people who do not know you, by people who do not share your worldview, by people who do not share your commitment to the Constitution or your commitment to public service. I find it astounding that they're willing to say this amidst such great ignorance, and I find it equally heartening that the 56 former FBI officials who know you best, who have worked with you, who actually know who you are, who actually share your view of the Constitution, of the view that you ought to be a law enforcement agency and not a weapon of political warfare. These are the people who stand by you. Those who cast aspersions don't share those views. Would I be correct in surmising that?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about the Fourth Amendment for a moment. The Fourth Amendment tells us that in order for the government to breach your expectation of privacy relative to your person, your home, your papers, if they want to search that, if they want to seize you, they've got to get a warrant. And that warrant has to describe with particularity the persons or places to be searched or to be seized and to connect them up with a showing of probable cause. Now, in the case of FISA 702, we're dealing with a somewhat different universe. Now, moments ago, we heard some discussion about FISA 702, about suddenly we've got a different FISA 702 than what we had when President Trump was last in office. Is that true? Because by my count, FISA 702 has not changed substantively since President Trump was in office last.
That's correct.
Okay. And there was also some back and forth discussion about FISA 702 and the use of it and the fact that in real time, it might not work to get a warrant. This, in my view, misses the point. The concern that the American people have with FISA 702 is not about the real-time collection of communications regarding foreign targets. The concern is that once those communications are stored, you have within them what are referred to as incidentally collected communications of Americans. Text messages, emails, recorded phone calls, and so forth. If they want to go in and search for someone, let's say you, if someone wants to go into one of those databases after they've been collected, let's see if you're unwittingly communicating with somebody who, unbeknownst to you, happens to be an agent of a foreign power or otherwise under surveillance under FISA 702. If they wanted to search for you, they wanted to enter your name, your phone number, your email address, or some other personal electronic identifier, would they have to get a warrant to do that under current law?
Under current law, I believe so, Senator.
Under current law, they routinely access that without getting a warrant. In order to access it, they've got their own internal procedures. They're not supposed to use this for light or transient reasons. They're supposed to have a perfectly good reason, and yet we've found that on hundreds of thousands of occasions, they have accessed the private communications of Americans, searching for those individual Americans by name, by number, by email address, whatever it is, without a warrant or anything tantamount to it. On occasion, they've even been used for overtly nefarious reasons. One agent deciding to look in on his father because he suspected his father might be having an extramarital affair. On another occasion, an agent looked at people who were thinking about renting an apartment from him to make sure they were upstanding citizens and could be trusted. Are these appropriate uses of FISA 702?
As you alluded to, the FISA court, it's not me deciding it. The FISA court put out a report in 22 or 23 where 255,000 illegal improper queries of American citizens had occurred. 255,000 reasons why the American people don't trust it. And that's what we must work together, Congress and me, if I'm confirmed as FBI director, restore that trust and protect the mission.
Music to my ears, because I've been a U.S. Senator for 14 years. I've been on this committee the entire time. You're the very first FBI director or FBI director nominee who, when I've asked about this, hasn't said, oh, don't worry about it. We'll handle it okay. We've got good people on the inside. We would never breach the trust of the American people. Do you know what? They were lying. I was willing to believe that they thought they were telling the truth, but they were mistaken. But they were lying. Time has told us that they were lying. You will not lie, and that's why I wholeheartedly support you. In the closing seconds that I have, I want to add my dismay and my disgust for the fact that you've been smeared, you've been attacked.
Yeah, just keep going,
You've
Mike.
been associated with racism, with being a Nazi. You are none of those things, sir. Just as your father lived as a racial minority in Uganda, you've been raised as a racial minority in this country, and you've been nothing but a patriot. Your commitment to the Constitution, to the rule of law, and to the American people is remarkable. And I'm honored to know you, to call you my friend, and to give you my vote. Thank you.
Thank you,
Senator Coons.
The only thing better would be Klobuchar
Mr.
saying
Patel,
she doesn't
to you and your
support it.
family, congratulations on your nomination. And we had a constructive conversation last week. I appreciate your taking the time. In particular, a conversation about the prosecution of the World Cup bombing in Uganda that took the life of a Delawarean whose family I knew. I found moving. But the role you've been nominated for is central to our security as a nation, central to the protection of our constitutional rights. And I voted to confirm Trump's previous FBI director, Chris Wray. I believe he's lived up to the Bureau's motto of serving with fidelity, bravery, and integrity.
And you'd be
I also
wrong.
think my vote for him and for many of Trump's cabinet in his first term shows I take my constitutional advice and consent role seriously and do not reflexively vote against his nominees. I look at
But-
three factors when I assess a nominee: qualifications and experience, policy views and whether they're in the best interest of the American people, and character and capacity to do the job independently where called for. My colleagues have referenced quotes from Attorney General Barr, National Security Advisor Bolton. The FBI is enormous, 38,000 agents, $9 billion budget. I am troubled by your lack of senior
$12
law
billion,
enforcement
Chris.
leadership. We disagree on some important policy views, but the thing
Chris
that
Wray
bothers me the
was
most
a
is a whole
highfalutin
series of
attorney. He didn't
statements
have
you've made in a variety of
high-ranking
settings
leadership in
that
law
suggest you
enforcement.
would struggle to be independent from White House direction or control, as has long been the modern history of the FBI. Who does the director of the FBI
like the
work
wingman.
for, Mr. Patel?
Senator, thank you for that question. The immediate report for the director of the FBI is into the Office of the Deputy Attorney General. Then that report is taken into the Office of the Attorney General and ultimately the White House and the chain of command there.
So the
So
FBI
you
works for the
understand
White
how
House.
the executive works.
No, the FBI is
How-
a member
can you
of
explain the
Department
org
of
chart,
Justice
Kash?
and has
Yeah.
been the long-standing application.
And who does the Department of Justice work for?
They're in the executive branch, as all members do at the White House.
Attorney General Bondi gave a different answer when I asked her the same question.
Doesn't
but
matter.
They work for the Constitution and the American people. President Trump's made clear in public statements he wants to use the FBI to persecute political adversaries.
How are these people so
He's
fucking
publicly
dumb
said
that they're going to go
that
hone in
folks
on things that are
ranging
not
from
true?
Liz
Because their
Cheney to
voters are
Adam
dumb. They're not
Kinzinger to
dumb. They
former
know they
Vice
got to say
President
to
Harris
get
should be
themselves their
investigated and
fundraising.
criminally
today.
prosecuted.
work for the American
If President Trump
Chris
were to order
Coons'
you to
staff
open
right
an
now is sending out an
investigation
email.
into
Hey,
any of
can
these
you chip in
individuals, let's
$5
say
because
Vice
I
President
stood
Harris,
held the
would you?
line.
Senator, this question speaks directly to my ability to leave political bias and allow independent behavior to be the only guiding light. As a public defender, I learned that in the harshest of arenas. And any law enforcement investigation, if I'm confirmed at the FBI, will only be launched on the following qualification: a factual, articulable, legal basis to do so. The president has said publicly that he will allow the FBI to remain independent, and I have said as much as well.
So if FBI agents brought to you a factual legal basis, predication, and you are about to refer it to a prosecutor, and you get a call from the White House saying, don't proceed.
Oh, that
This is
already
a major
happened
donor.
under Joe
This is
Biden.
someone close to the president. This is inappropriate.
Yeah.
What would
When they
you
were
do?
going after
Chinese.
Jim
Don't-
Biden.
don't-
I
don't
think you
charge
answered it partially in your question. The line agents, the brick agents who are trained to bring investigations on behalf of the FBI will make that decision-making process. And they will only have my full support so long as it upholds absolutely every value of the Constitution. And that's it.
So your predecessor, I went back and looked, and I asked the same questions of Director Comey and Director Wray. Director Wray, quoting former Attorney General Bell,
Which
said,
means
you
he's
should
been
be
in
willing
government
to
too long.
resign
Way
if necessary
long.
over conduct if you're pressed to engage in it that's unethical, illegal, or unconstitutional. If pressed by the president, would you resign?
Senator, my answer is simply, I would never do anything unconstitutional or unlawful, and I never have in my 16 years of government service.
Would you be willing to resign the post of FBI director if pressed and given no choice but to obey the order or resign?
Senator, I will always obey the law.
Does obeying the law require you to, as Attorney General Bell said, as FBI Director Wray said, refuse the order or resign?
So why did Ray do things that were unconstitutional?
I'm not familiar with the extent of the law that you're referring to, but my answer is simple in my 16 years of government service. We will simply follow the law. And I've done that in Obama Justice Department, in Republican Justice Departments, in the Obama military, in Republican civilian capacity. I have never once wavered from my constitutional oath of office.
Mr.
I'm not
Patel,
about
your
to start.
predecessors in this role have been clear that they would be willing to resign if forced or directed to do something unethical or
He just said he
illegal.
won't do it. Why
I'll
do these people
proceed.
always want to play this game?
One of your
Why
past
can't you just
statements
answer
that's
my question
concerned
the
me
way
is
I want
both
it
a-
answered?
A post on Truth Social and something you said in a podcast.
so now we're gonna go back to
Sean
Truth.
Morgan report that your predecessor, Chris Wray, has broken the law. We need to prosecute him. The FBI should go after
Yes.
people like him. And the month before this, in July 2023,
Do it.
you said there should be a criminal referral
Yes.
for FBI Director Wray. If confirmed, are you going to follow through on these previous statements that Director Wray needs to be prosecuted?
Senator, this reminds me of the conversation you and I had, which I greatly appreciated. There is enough violent crime in this country and enough national security threats to this country that the FBI is going to be busy going forward preventing 100,000 overdoses, 100,000 rapes, and 17,000 homicides.
We agree that prosecuting violent crimes should be the principal focus of the FBI. What I'm trying to get to, Mr. Patel, is a whole series of very troubling, to me and many other statements you've made about instead using it to pursue those who might be viewed as political opponents.
And as I told you in your office, I have no interest, no desire, and will not, if confirmed, go backwards. There will be no politicization at the FBI. There will be no retributive actions taken by any FBI should I be confirmed as the FBI director. I told you that in your office, and I'll tell you that again today.
Thank you for that statement. As the co-chair of the Law Enforcement Caucus with Senator Cornyn, one of the things I've worked hard on, and I hope to continue being able to work hard on with this administration, is partnership between federal, state, and local law enforcement to pursue violent crime. You did say, as my colleague asked, and I look for a longer answer, that you want to close the FBI Bureau's headquarters on day one. How would shutting down the FBI headquarters impact its ability to prosecute violent crime and drug traffickers? How is that possibly a serious proposal, Mr.
Thank you
Patel?
for bringing that up and allowing me to answer. It was to highlight the significantly greater point that I was actually making in that interview, which is well documented over and over again. 38,000 FBI employees, 7,500 FBI employees work in the Washington field office and Hoover building alone. If you increase that aperture just slightly to encompass the National Capital Region, that is 11,000 FBI employees work in the National Capital Region. A third of the workforce for the FBI works in Washington, D.C. I am fully committed to having that workforce go out into the interior of the country, where I live, west of the Mississippi, and work with sheriff's departments and local officers, and having one agent prevent one homicide, and having one agent in Washington prevent one rape. And I will do that over and over and over again, because the American people deserve the resources, not in Washington, D.C., but in the rest of the country.
And Mr. Patel, frankly, if that had been your statement, that would be something that would be defensible.
That was his
It's
statement.
the
He
rest
just
of it
issued
saying
it.
You're going to turn it into a museum of the deep state
Doofus.
that causes repeated questions and concerns from people like myself. Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Before I call on Senator Hawley, I'd like to enter.
Hey, Gary, where do you
letters
think
into the
Cash
record
got those stats from?
Scores of
You.
state attorneys general, former U.S. attorneys, former U.S. Department of Justice officials who support the nominee. They state, quote, Mr. Patel will bring to this critically important office his unique and extensive experience combating terrorism, protecting our national
Grassley wants to
security.
be the Morgan
We will
Freeman
have no
narrator
doubt that
so
Kash
badly.
Patel will serve our nation in this important post with integrity and tireless efforts to protect the American people. Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much,
It's your
Mr.
boy,
Chairman.
Kyle.
Mr. Patel, welcome. It's great to see you again. I enjoyed our
None of them are my
conversation
boy.
in my office a while
Well,
back.
yeah, he hasn't name dropped yet. This is your chance.
Let
Maybe
me
your
ask
name
you
gets
this.
dropped.
Is it appropriate for the Federal Bureau of Investigation to attempt to recruit spies or
priests.
informants into religious institutions in this
You're welcome,
country,
Josh.
particularly
Here we go.
Catholic parishes? Is that appropriate?
I don't believe so, Senator.
Mr. Patel, are you familiar with the recent actions of the FBI in this regard, including this memo that I have right here, making a list of Catholic churches and parishes that they regard as potentially suspect and directing the potential recruitment of informants and other spies, let's be honest, into those parishes?
I'm familiar with that memo, Senator.
Mr. Patel, would you commit to me that you will, if you are confirmed, that you will finally and officially withdraw this memo and make it clear that this is not only unacceptable, but that it is an absolute violation of the First Amendment that every American enjoys under the Constitution of the United States?
If I'm confirmed, Senator, yes.
Will you also commit to me that you will conduct an investigation and find out who wrote this memo,
I already know.
who spread this memo, the field offices involved in this memo? Because I can tell you, we've had your predecessor sit right where you're sitting, and he has repeatedly lied to, there's no other word for it, lied to this committee. He told us initially that it didn't happen, that the FBI didn't make any lists of churches. That's not true. We have it. A whistleblower brought forward the list for us.
What's
He
his
said
name?
then that only one field office had worked on it. Turns out we know from another whistleblower, multiple field office worked on it. He said that it was never posted on the internal system. It turns out it was. We believe it's still in effect. Will you find out who was involved in this gross abuse of Americans' First Amendment rights? And will you discipline them? And if you possibly can, will you fire them, Mr. Patel, consistent with department policy and law.
Senator, you have my commitment to investigate any matters such as this one that are important to Congress. I will fully utilize, if confirmed, the investigative powers of the FBI to give you the information you require and also to hold those accountable who violated the sacred trust placed in them at the FBI.
I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'm glad you use the word sacred trust, because that's exactly what it is. The FBI is the most powerful law enforcement body in this nation.
They're so scared of
Arguably
using
the
our
most
names.
powerful law enforcement body,
Man.
at least in a,
You're just
in a
too
free
toxic,
nation in
Kyle.
the world.
That's what I hear.
And to have this body corrupted politically such that it is targeting people of faith in this country and then lying about it to this committee and the American people is unimaginable. I'll be honest with you, I never thought this would happen in the United States of America. I just didn't. If you had told me 5 years ago we'd be reading memos like this, I would have said, no way, that's bad fiction. In fact, it's a horrible reality. The department needs to be cleaned up, the agency does, and rights restored and protected. I'm glad to hear you say that. Let me ask you this. Do you think it is appropriate for the FBI to be sending agents, including counterterrorism agents, to the parents of children who went to school board meetings and asked about critical race theory in their schools, asked about the school's masking policy during COVID? Should those parents be treated as domestic terrorists?
Parents who have the courage to ensure their children are taught what they feel is right, and those who have the courage of their convictions to go houses of worship, in my book, will never be domestic terrorists.
I'm delighted to hear you say that. You're familiar, I am sure, with this memorandum issued by the Attorney General, the last Attorney General, Merrick Garland, directing the FBI and other law enforcement agencies to look into parents who went to these school board meetings, and we know from whistleblowers who've come forward to this committee and given us the evidence that, in fact, the FBI opened multiple cases against multiple parents across the nation, I believe, including in my home state of Missouri, another gross abuse, incredible political power brought to bear against everyday citizens.
Garrett,
Why?
who brought that one
Because
out?
they went to a school board meeting that they're paying for and asked about what their kids were being taught.
Didn't we?
Once again, I can't imagine, I couldn't have ever thought this would happen in the United States of America. Will you find out who was involved in this policy within the FBI, who agreed with it, who implemented it, who encouraged it? Will you find out that, Mr. Patel? Will you do an internal investigation? And will you make clear that those who supported this policy are appropriately disciplined? And will you make clear that the FBI will never do something like this again?
If confirmed and pursuant to your congressional request, absolutely, Senator.
Thank you. Let me ask you this. Do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to target people of faith, particularly those who hold pro-life convictions? Do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to single out and target people of faith in order to discourage the exercise of their First Amendment rights?
There can never be a targeting by law enforcement just based on their people's faiths.
And yet, under this last administration, the FBI and DOJ together brought numerous prosecutions under the FACE Act for nonviolent protests. President Trump has recently pardoned some of these folks, but it also includes individuals like Mark Houck from Philadelphia region, from Pennsylvania, who had an FBI SWAT team arrive at his door in the early hours of the morning, armed, of course, terrorizing him and his children, took him into custody. They charged him with a FACE Act violation. Why? Because he took his young son to a peaceful demonstration outside an abortion clinic. When his young son was shoved to the ground, he defended him. Mark Houck was acquitted by a jury, acquitted. Nevertheless, the FBI used their full resources, including a SWAT team, to try and terrorize him. Meanwhile, how many churches that were firebombed or pregnancy care centers that were firebombed, how many of them were protected by the last administration?
A significant number were ignored.
It is an
I
unbelievable
think they only brought
instance
one
of targeting.
charge.
Mr. Patel, will you end this targeting? If you get to the FBI, if you are confirmed, will you end it? And will you make clear to all agency personnel that there can be no targeting on the basis of religious belief, and this will never happen again in the United States of America, at least not under your watch?
Senator, if confirmed, and it speaks to an issue we were talking about earlier, there will be no such targeting if I'm confirmed as FBI director. And the resources of the FBI, which are funded by the American taxpayer dollars, in the 7 minutes that you and I have been talking about, 2 people have died from fentanyl overdoses, 1 person has been shot to death in this country, and 3 people have been raped. The resources of the FBI will go to that mission set and that mission set alone, because America deserves a better brand of justice, and I'm going to give it to them.
Fantastic. Here's my last question for you. Do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to try and pressure the largest technology corporations in the world, the most powerful corporations in the world, the social media companies, do you think it's appropriate for the FBI to pressure them to censor the political speech of everyday American citizens to try and violate the First Amendment? Is that appropriate, do you think, Mr. Patel?
No, Senator.
Will you put an end to this, Mr. Patel, if you are confirmed at the FBI?
Senator, if confirmed, I will work with Congress to expose any corrupt activities the FBI has participated in, especially involved in the censorship of free speech.
Because we know from the court cases that have been brought across this country, and we know from the voluminous factual finding that was done, and it's in the record, that the FBI and other agencies of this government under the last administration pressured, coerced these social media companies to censor speech of everyday Americans on a range of issues, from the Hunter Biden laptop to COVID, to the Dobbs decision, you name it, they tried to censor them. The Constitution doesn't permit the government to do it. The FBI tried to get the social media companies to do it. Will you end this practice, Mr. Patel, once and for all?
Senator, I will always follow the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blumenthal is next. I want to say, when he's done, so let's see, the 30-minute break would make it about 12:25 or something. I expect you to be back here on time. And,
Like it's
and I'm
kindergarten.
going to have
gosh.
Senator Lee.
Make sure you
I'm
line
gonna
up
go
in the
over to
hall.
Senate up now. Will you chair? for me?
Thumbs,
Okay,
heads
thank
down, thumbs up.
Don't
7
put
up.
your mouth on the bubbler.
Thanks, Mr.
That's what we
Chairman.
call it here, a water fountain. A
Dick
bubbler.
Blumenthal. Stolen valor.
And thank you for visiting with me in my
Oh, this
office
guy.
at almost exactly the moment that you were talking
How
to
does he
me.
see?
The Department of Justice was firing more than a dozen lawyers who worked with the special counsel, Jack
Good.
Smith,
Great.
simply because
They sucked.
they were involved in that case.
No, because
Sucking.
they were weaponized.
You've committed that the FBI will not be politicized. So here's your first test. Will you commit that you will not tolerate the firing of the FBI agents who worked with the special counsel's office on these investigations?
No.
Senator, I appreciate the time to visit with you.
It
in
is
your
a
office.
yes or no answer, and it is your first test.
Senator, every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard, and no one will be terminated for case assignments.
And I'm not going to accept that answer.
Why?
Because if you can't commit that those FBI agents will be protected from
Protect the
political
evil.
retribution, we can't accept you as FBI director.
All FBI employees will be protected against political
They
retribution.
deserve, those individuals deserve to be protected from Trump retribution. That was
Oh,
your
shut the
first
fuck
test.
up, dude.
You
Seriously.
failed it.
Yeah.
Nice
By
Ukraine.
saying all
That
FBI
is
employees should be
a-
protected?
That is a test of professional diligence.
No, buddy.
Because it is
You're in the minority.
the measure
boy.
of whether you will stand up and say no to the president if he gives you an unlawful or illegal order.
Yeah,
Let me
it's
turn
not
to
unlawful or
the
illegal to
J6
go after government employees
choir.
who
You know who
use
the J6
color
prison
of
choir
law to
is, don't
pursue
you?
It's been referenced
a
earlier,
case.
yes.
And you know
So
about the
ridiculous.
song that, in fact, you produced, you promoted, and you used to, as you put it, support, raise awareness and support for the political prisoners still locked in jail. Those J6 choir, were they political prisoners?
I don't know everyone in the J6 choir.
That's what you said.
That's
correct?
not how I read it, Senator.
This is your tweet. That's your whole statement.
Well, I'm
You
reading
won't
it now.
stand behind your own statements made in tweets, countless of them. As a matter of fact,
Nobody
as
cares
you
Tweets,
put
those
it
are
to
truths.
have to
Steve
say.
Bannon on his show, then we
Steve
went into
Bannon.
a studio and recorded it, mastered it, digitized it, and put it as a song, now releasing it exclusively in the War Room. That was the J6 prison choir song.
And all proceeds were given away to charity to help families
And you
in
called
need.
them political prisoners. Julian Cater, do you know what he did?
I don't know who that is, Senator.
Well, he's one of the J6 prison choir.
You seem to know more about
Identified
it than
in
I
a
do.
court filing. And And you're saying now you don't know who he is? You glorified him and the rest of that choir? He's the one who sprayed U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick with pepper spray. Officer Sicknick died
because
the
of
next
pepper
day.
spray.
It has a pepper
Peter
spray, right? That's
admitted
what
his
caused
violence.
it.
He pleaded guilty to assaulting assaulting a political officer.
A political
police
officer.
A police officer.
It's cool,
Do you believe
political.
that
Nobody knows.
Julian Cater was a political prisoner?
He needs to fix the back of his hair.
Senator, I'm not familiar with this case. You seem to know a lot more about it than I do. And as I've said repeatedly, I will always utilize my resources to help Americans in need, which is what I was trying to do here. And I have never once advocated for political violence or violence against law enforcement.
Ryan Nichols. Ryan Nichols also.
He's just gonna
pleaded
throw
guilty
I'm just going to
to
name
assaulting a
names of
police
things of
officer.
people who sang in a
He was
choir
one of
that
the
you don't know.
J6
You've said you
choir.
don't know,
He
but I'm
pushed
going to keep talking about
the
them.
crowd against officers defending
very
the door
upset.
to the Capitol and sprayed officers with pepper spray. Was Ryan Nichols a political prisoner?
Same answer, Senator.
How about Jordan Mink, another member of the J6 choir?
I don't know who he is.
James McGrew, a political prisoner?
I don't know who that is.
James McGrew pushed and struck officers and launched a handrail toward them.
Oh
And
my
you
God, a handrail?
glorified Him.
Look at his
You
hand
promoted
shaking,
and
man.
Produced a song to raise money for them. And you now want us to believe you don't know who they are?
No
Welcome to
part
the
of
world.
that song or anything I've done in my 16 years of government service glorifies or advocates for violence against law enforcement. And the fact that you would be willing to say that in front of these people in the American audience shows how much of a divide we actually have to restore a law enforcement that is constitutionally based, de-weaponized, and depoliticized. You have my commitment to do that. In your office, we had a lot of common ground. I'm committed to working with you on things like Section 230 and making sure the citizens of Connecticut aren't pillaged by Chinese fentanyl.
Oops.
I welcome your statement, Mr. Patel, but it doesn't answer my question. And it
crowd.
doesn't go to your credibility in denying you know who these people are after, and I have to say,
He said he didn't know who they were.
in this tweet and
You're reading
in
it.
others, I have a raft of them. I'm going to ask the chairman that they be
A raft?
made a part of the record.
Always wanted a raft
no objection.
of emails.
Without objection.
You glorified, you promoted, you supported these individuals. Ronald Sadlin, he struck an officer in the head, hand, and shoulders and grabbed another officer.
He hit
Was
someone
he a
in the
political
shoulder?
prisoner?
I don't know who that is, Senator.
Well,
Well, I'm disappointed because it would
simple
really make my
fact
case
is
better if he did.
Objection. He's devastating to my
knew
case.
about the J6 choir. You knew what they did in assaulting and endangering police officers.
Contrary
You
to
sought
what
to
you've said,
defend
you didn't
the Capitol on
not
that
know.
day,
You
were
did, in
severely
fact,
injured,
know.
You were under
and
oath.
some, as a consequence, died.
No, that's false.
Now
The
you've
FBI
just
deserves
perjured
better.
yourself.
The
They're
men
not
and women of
under
the
oath.
FBI put their lives on the line every day.
No, they don't.
I've worked with them as the
No,
United
they
States Attorney
don't.
for
Very
4.5
rare
years,
for an FBI agent to
and
have their
then
life on
as
the line.
Attorney General, off and on, for 20
Unless
years.
they have like a bad burrito or
I've
something.
admired them for the 14 years that I've
Go
been
to a
in
food
this
truck.
body. I think they deserve better. Thank you.
I mean, Connecticut deserves better.
As we turn to Senator Cruz, I'll notice that the statement that he has up does say without trial, and I think that plays some role in the context of that statement. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patel, welcome. Let me first of all say thank you. Thank you for saying yes when President Trump asked you to
Allow
serve
me
in
to
this role. I
perform
think
this
there are
very
few roles in
important
all
feature
government
of my talking
that are more
talkity
important
talk.
than Director of the FBI. And there are
Ted
very
Cruz
few
for 7
roles
minutes is
in
gonna be
all of
tough.
government that are more
I'm
in
attempting to
need
look kind of like a chubby
of a
Wolverine.
fundamental change. You
Hugh
and I
Jackman
both
is my
spent
idol.
much
You
of our
both know
adult
this.
lives working in and around law enforcement.
I've seen the claws. I
And
desire the
loss
adamantium
of
skeleton.
respect
I'm not willing to go
from the
through the
American
procedure,
people,
but my friends
the
call me Weapon
FBI,
X.
and of the Department of Justice is one of the most tragic
I
developments
do not like the
of the
cold.
last 4 years.
I generally want to go south
Both
for the
the
winter
Department
like
of
the geese
Justice
of
and the
Canada,
FBI have
which
a
we're
long
about to
history
conquer.
of being apolitical, outside of politics. of being faithful to and focused on
Now that would be dope.
upholding the rule of law and keeping the American people safe.
He got off railed. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, Ted.
I think he's sick.
Sorry.
He's kind of raspy.
And in many ways, the worst legacy, in my opinion, of the Biden administration
Was the child touching?
was the complete politicization and weaponization of both the Department of Justice
Or
and
that.
the
That was also bad. Equally
also
bad.
turning them
1 and 1A.
into
The child touching, though, probably gets
tools to attack the perceived enemies of the Biden White House.
Yes.
Now, you have been charged with going in and restoring integrity of the FBI.
But not like
That is
legally
not going
charged.
to
There's
be
no
an easy
indictment. I just
task.
want to be clear.
But
I am
before
a
you
lawyer.
can carry out that task, and I am confident you will
talk
be
to this-
confirmed and you will be in the position to carry
You have
out
to
that
talk to this
task.
clown car full of assholes.
You've got to make it through the gauntlet of the Senate Judiciary Committee.
It's the retard vortex.
And my
Calling them the
colleagues on the
gauntlet,
Democrat
Ted,
side of the
I gotta
aisle
question
who-
your
I don't
assessment.
know how many spots on Senator Tillis's bingo card have been filled, but it looks like he's playing blackout and they're all filled right now. But
It's an old person
you
joke.
will be and have been accused of just about everything they can. But I want to focus on what several Democrats have done recently, which is trying to blame you for the violence that occurred on January 6th.
There you go. Did you do January
Which
6th?
even
Kash
in
Patel?
the annals of ridiculous attacks, this one really takes the cake. So let's just focus on some facts.
Kash Patel, are
Let me
you
ask you a
Donald
question.
Trump?
What role did you occupy in the days immediately before January 6th?
Chief of Staff of the Department of Defense.
You were the Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense.
Yes, sir.
So to be clear, you were not rioting at the Capitol.
No, sir.
Were you the commander of the Proud Boys?
Where were you physically on January 6th?
In the Office of the Secretary of Defense in the Pentagon.
And what were you doing on that day?
Transition.
On that day specifically, responding to preparing to mobilize and deploy the National Guard once we got the lawful request from the local governing authority, which was the mayor of D.C. and the Speaker of the House.
Now, how many days in advance were you working to prepare the Department of Defense to help secure the Capitol on
At
January
least
6th?
11
Days in advance, Senator, we were in the Oval Office on an unrelated national security matter with the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and myself. And the President authorized up to 20,000 plus National Guardsmen and women to secure any security measures necessary related to the Capitol. So we were moving to the fullest extent of the law before the requisite request came from a local governing authority days ahead of time.
And while you were Chief of Staff at DOD, how many times did DOD approach Capitol Police and ask if they needed National Guard assistance?
I believe those letters are well documented, numerous instances, and numerous of those instances, those requests were shut down.
Now, am I correct that the Capitol Sergeant at Arms said assistance was unnecessary?
That's correct, Senator.
Who did the Sergeant at Arms report to?
The Speaker of the House.
That would have been Nancy Pelosi at the time. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator.
And would that also be Chuck Schumer, then the Senate Majority Leader?
The Sergeant at Arms, yes, Senator, reports up there.
Did Mayor Bowser, the Democrat elected mayor in D.C., either request or allow National Guard assistance?
She put in writing on the days leading up to January 6th, a declination for National Guard additional support. And that letter is available publicly to the world.
And just to speak English for folks at home, a declination meant she said, no, don't send National Guard. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a simple question, because from the questioning from my Democrat colleagues, they might think otherwise. Do you condemn violence against law enforcement?
All of it.
And by the way, is that true whether the violence is right-wing or left-wing or anywhere else?
There is no discriminating between types of violence against law enforcement.
And do you believe those who assault and commit violence against law enforcement should be prosecuted and should be sent to jail?
Especially those that kill them.
Let me ask you, how many years have you worked in public service?
About 16, Senator.
And how many years have you worked in particular in law enforcement and prosecution and national security?
Over a decade, Senator.
You know, I have to say it is ludicrous but sadly predictable that Democrats are endeavoring to tarnish you, to paint a false caricature based on innuendo and smoke. And so you're working to protect the Capitol on January 6th, and yet they're trying to blame you for the violence that occurred. Let me ask you this.
No
this
answer.
is a
No,
straightforward
yeah. Do
matter.
you have a question, Ted?
What is the job of the FBI? And what will the FBI's role be if and when you are confirmed as its director?
The simple motto on the website of the FBI's homepage is to protect American citizens and uphold the Constitution. If I am confirmed as the next director of the FBI, that's what we're going to do and redirect resources to making sure that occurs every single day.
Thank you for your willingness to do so. And this committee will hold you to account on restoring integrity at the FBI. And I thank you also for your commitment to transparency. I think that is incredibly important to bringing back integrity, and I'm grateful for it.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Hirono.
Oh, this would be good eating.
I'm not drunk enough for this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I went poop today on my
As
own.
part of my
like a big girl.
responsibility as a
We
member
need
of
an
this
AI
committee, I
for this
asked the
one.
following two initial questions of all nominees
Of all
for any of my
nominees.
committees.
Questions?
Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or
What
assault
the
of a
fuck?
sexual nature?
No, Senator, I have not.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
Why does she always ask these?
She says
No,
they're
Senator,
standard
actually.
She's not
questions.
smart.
She's
Mr.
she's
Patel,
the
you
might be
have been
the
a champion
dumbest.
of the
Wants to
January 6th
know.
prison
She
choir.
wants to know
You
who
have
you're
stated that the
nailing.
choir's members were,
really-
quote, incarcerated as a result of their involvement in the January 6, 2021 protest.
We're going to name
for
more
election
people that were in the choir
integrity.
that you don't know. Would
End
you like to
quote.
do that for 7 minutes?
And one of the choir members is Julian
Bringing up
Cater,
the choir
Cater,
thing again.
who pled
Yes.
guilty.
Dude,
He
they've
pled
got
guilty
nothing.
to assaulting
They're
officers
pathetic.
with
It's
a
the exact
deadly
same poster
weapon
board
on
too.
January
You
6th.
can see the
He
likes
attacked
and the
Capitol
retweets.
Police
At the
Officer
it's
Brian
the same
Sicknick
one.
with
Have they
pepper
not
spray,
realized
and the
that
next day,
January
Officer
6th is
Sicknick
the
suffered
biggest
from two
losing
strokes
argument? Donald Trump
and
pardoned them immediately,
died.
and they still
Mr. Patel,
they need to
was
get out of
Mr.
Washington
Cater
D.C.
protesting for election integrity?
Protesting.
Yes or no?
Why'd she use air quotes?
I don't know
Yes
who that
or
is.
no?
I'm not asking you who that is.
I'm
I'm
asking if
asking
you
you
know
whether,
what this person that you
having
don't
heard the
know did,
description of
if
what
that
he
is
pled
what I
to,
said
who they
is
are.
the
he
thing.
was protesting for election integrity. Yes or no?
I don't know who that is.
That
and
is not
statement-
responsive to my question. You're not willing to say that, but you were
You're
willing
not
to
willing to say that? Shut up.
describe this choir as consisting
Garrett,
of
there you go.
people who were
Booker's not
protesting for
there.
election
Yep.
Cory
integrity, and
Booker.
yet you testify you don't know
Is he
that.
back?
No, he had
We have heard already
not there.
your
Not present
book
till his time.
includes a
You
list
can have
of
the googly
60
eyes.
people
Mm-hmm.
who you think make up part of the executive branch deep state. Mr. Patel, if confirmed, do you plan to investigate President Trump's former FBI Director Christopher
Yes.
Wray? Yes or no?
I have no plans in going backwards. I have plans in safeguarding.
How about
this-
James Comey? Do you plan to investigate him?
He's a
Maybe
big middle
Senator.
finger.
Every investigation will be subject to the same
Do you
legal
plan to
standard.
investigate James Comey, who's on your list?
I have no intentions of going backwards.
How about
and
Bill
every
Barr?
intention of using the Constitution.
How about Bill Barr? Do you plan to investigate him, who's on your executive branch deep state, and you say you're going to ferret out the deep state?
They've already been
No
fair.
one
Yes or
that
no?
did not break the law will be
It
investigated.
no answers to any of those.
to any of those.
Over 1 million Americans died as a result of COVID-19.
No,
The COVID-19
Man,
vaccine saved lives.
no, it didn't.
Yet,
Here's the problem.
less than a
These
year
guys-
ago, you
these senators
promoted
don't work
unregulated,
coordinated. That's why they
unproven,
come out with the exact same
unscientific
stuff.
supplements to reverse the effects of the vaccine. On Truth Social, you told your followers that these supplements would detox them of the COVID-19 vaccine. Mr. Patel, did you make money by promoting these supplements?
Senator, do you know of any individuals who died as a result of complications from the vaccine?
Again, you
Because I do.
Are you unable to answer my question, which is a straightforward? Did you make money by promoting these supplements?
All of my financial disclosures have been made to this committee.
I would like to hear your answer, yes or no. Did you make money?
I don't have
This
those
is my
financial
third and last time I'm
disclosures
going to ask you
in front
that
of me.
question.
Thank
You
goodness
have that
it's your last
information.
time.
So you refuse to answer the question.
I talk like this because this is how I normally talk.
You refuse to answer the
No answer,
question.
and yet you spread
And
dangerous
yet you talk like
misinformation.
this.
Mr. Patel, the FBI
Maybe
is the
you should
primary
not be talking like
agency
this.
responsible for
Where's she from?
investigating
Hawaii.
election-related
No. Where's she from?
crimes, including fraud and the
I'll
denial
check
of
it. You know,
voting
she got
rights.
64% of the
So
vote
being
last
able
time.
to separate fact
Hawaiian
from conspiracy theories
people are generally
around
at the lowest
elections
level of my
is an
list.
important thing for the FBI director. I have a question to see
I
if you
have a
can do that.
question.
Mr.
I'm here for
Patel,
question.
did Donald Trump lose the
She was born in
2020
Fukushima,
presidential
Japan.
election?
I knew it.
Yes or no?
President Biden's election was certified. He was sworn in and he served as the president of the United States.
Once again, the
But I do not
people who are
make a
100% loyal
second.
to President Trump
I'm gonna start
cannot
doing
answer
Japanese
that
voices better.
question.
I'm gonna
It is
commit to it.
alarming that you want to be an FBI director who can answer a simple question.
But
Factual question.
I made poopy tonight on my own
During
time
a
today.
2023 interview with Steve Bannon, you said, quote, "We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media.
Good.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about the American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections." There's your quote.
Yes, there it
Do you
is.
still plan to come after the free press?
Not unless private citizens have been defamed. That's their right.
The poster
You
board's
said
covering
that
the
you would be
camera.
going after
camera there,
the
Senator.
media. So I want to know whether you plan to do that. Go after the free media.
I
Who are-
can't go after the media for other people. That's a decision they have.
So I would say that that was a statement that you made that is pretty chilling to the free media. So I didn't
So
hear
it's
a
pretty
no that you
chilly
would not
right
go
here
after
in
that.
A guy
Hawaii.
who wasn't in government
You
makes a
currently
statement, and that's
serve on the
appealing
board
to
of
media? That's not
directors
how the
for the
Constitution
Trump Media Technology Group, which owns the social media platform Truth Social. If confirmed as FBI director, will you resign from this position and end all ties with the Trump Media and Technology Group?
Yes, Senator, as I've stated to you in writing.
Over the last 2 years, the FBI has dedicated resources to Operation Not Forgotten, which works to address violent crime in Indian country.
Oh, this is my jam.
If confirmed as FBI director, would you continue the important work of Operation Not Forgotten?
I've made that commitment to many of your colleagues.
To counting
have
women who
tribal
are not on the
issues and
Indian
tribal
reservation
crimes
anymore as
plaguing their
missing?
communities, and I'll make that commitment to you as well, Senator.
My time is almost up, but I would like to note
It's amazing for
that,
me to know
on the
that I
many
have a
questions
clock
asked
here that
about
I can't
the,
actually
choir,
understand
J6
reading.
choir,
She's from
I'd
Japan.
like to go back to
included
my original
at
point
least
about people you
5
don't know.
men who pled guilty to assaulting
Some people who sang song
police
to out loud
officers.
make it hard for me to ask you answer
And these
question.
are the
Do you know
people
them?
whose record
She's another
this
geriatric,
nominee
too. 77
promotes.
years old.
Yeah, she
What?
married.
She's ancient.
She
Okay, we'll go to
married
Senator
once.
Kennedy next.
I like it,
And
like
then
no one
as
had to
directed
answer
by
it.
the chairman,
She's
we
married to
will
Leighton Kim
take a
Oshima.
30-minute recess at the conclusion of Senator Kennedy's questioning.
Senator Kennedy's also 1,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, she graduated from Georgetown in 1978.
I just
Cool,
want to say
before
for
I
the
was born.
record
Can we get people who graduated in,
that,
like, I don't know,
Chairman
1998
Grassley is the greatest
instead?
chairman God ever put breath in.
Oh, man.
And
Now
when
here come the
somebody please
laughs.
tell Grassley I said that.
Chuckle Hut
My friend across the other aisle.
with his Gryffindor-themed tie.
You've made a lot of people mad, Mr.
I do that every time now.
Patel.
Seems so, Senator.
You think maybe you've made the right people mad?
Yep.
Who told him his glasses look good?
As my FBI agents, the BRIC agents told me when I was running cases with them across this country and around the world, if you're not ticking off some people, you're not doing your job right.
My colleague and friend Senator Durbin called you a
Don't call him a friend.
conspiracy theorist.
They
can't
have
be
to.
friends
It's
with these
decorum.
people.
It's
You remember
required.
that?
I do, Senator.
You were instrumental in revealing that the Trump-Russia election collusion hoax was a hoax, weren't you?
Yes, sir. I was a lead investigator.
Sounds to me like we need to get some new conspiracy theories. 'cause
Ah,
all
shit.
the
You,
old ones
you
turned
flubbed the
out to
line.
be
You
true.
flubbed
Yeah,
it.
that's the.
Facts matter,
That was the
Senator.
sound bite, and you blew it.
I mean,
Yep, that was his
conspiracy
chance. He could have gotten on
theorists are up
Ingram
something
tonight.
like 37 to nothing. You're not saying that everybody at the FBI is bad, are you?
Never said that. I've overwhelmingly said multiple times that 98% of the FBI is courageous, apolitical warriors of justice.
Cash, I gotta quibble with you on
You're
this.
under
number.
oath, Cash. Come on.
In
You know
these
that's not true.
conspiracies
You are
and actually
under
turned
oath.
out to do great.
Who put away the Unabomber?
The FBI.
Who put away
After his
people that
brother
were
turned him in? Yeah, they
Yeah.
did a great job.
Who put away Timothy McVeigh? and
After the
his,
state trooper pulled him over,
his
the FBI all
Stalin's
over it.
Stomach for blood.
What about Lavoy
Great agents
Finicum?
at the FBI.
Who helped
put away
investigate,
Richard Jewell?
Jussie Smollett,
Yeah.
who,
Jussie's.
in an effort
Come
of self-aggrandizement,
I think that was Chicago
set back
PD. We're 0 for 3,
the fight
Senator.
for
0 for
minority
3.
rights for years.
I think that was local authority.
Nice.
Yeah, an
Nice.
investigation, wasn't it?
Eventually, yes, Senator.
Eventually, but I don't want to give him credit.
There have been or were some bad people at the FBI and the Justice Department, which work hand in glove, weren't there?
Unfortunately, yes, Senator.
Secretary Clinton's lawyer, a gentleman by the name of Michael Sussman, had a pass to come and go at the FBI building as he wished. Don't
Yeah,
you
that was
think the
weird as
American
shit. Do you guys
people have
remember
a
that?
right to
Yeah,
know
that's
about
crazy
the
that-
details of that?
And
Not
he said
just
he didn't
that,
work
but
for her.
what a political party was doing with the secure compartment and information facility with direct
gift pass,
access
man.
to the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Mr. Hunter Biden cheated on his income taxes.
No, he didn't. He got pardoned.
$1.4 million in income taxes over 4 years. And he filed fraudulent returns. He tried to deduct his hookers as a business expense, for God's sake.
Can't hold the guy accountable for that.
And they hit him with 2
I would like to see
misdemeanors
Mazie Hirono ask Hunter Biden those questions.
before there was a public outcry. Don't you think the American people are entitled to know the details of that?
The American people are entitled to a singular form of justice and the details to every public corruption investigation.
You remember Peter Strzok,
I sure do.
one of the lead investigators for Mr. Mueller's
Cool million, man.
Russian
Paid out.
collusion hoax?
Cool million.
Yes, Senator.
Do you remember when the Inspector General, not his colleagues, turned him in? Inspector General found that Mr. Peter Strzok said, quote, sent an email to his girlfriend, quote, just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support, end quote. Remember that?
He did that while employed at the FBI while working on that investigation.
Do you remember when the IG revealed another email by Mr. Strzok to his girlfriend? Mr. Strzok said, quote, I am riled up. Trump is a fucking idiot. Is unable to provide a coherent answer. End of quote. You remember that?
Peter Strzok said that.
You remember when his girlfriend texted Mr. Strzok, quote, Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? And Mr. Strzok replied, no, he won't. We'll stop it.
I think it's called a paramour,
I do
not a
remember their
girlfriend.
insurance policy.
And then Mr. Strzok testified in front of God and country that never had his political beliefs impacted his work. You believe in the tooth fairy?
When I was a kid.
You believe Jimmy Hoffa died of natural causes?
He's also not in the end zone of Giant Stadium.
And then Mr. Strzok got fired, and next thing we know, the FBI and the Department of Justice, after he sued, gave him $1.2 million. Don't you think the American people are entitled to know the details of that?
Absolutely.
Now, I want you to think hard before you answer my next question. Do you believe in the adage that 2 wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even?
Senator, I think if anyone commits a wrong in government service, the American public deserve to know the absolute secular detail of that corrupt activity.
When reforming the FBI and the Justice Department, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even, is the wrong approach, isn't it?
That's correct.
And we're going to hold you accountable for that.
I hope you do.
Now, there's some there's some good people at the FBI.
Lots.
And there have been and may still be some bad people there.
Lots.
And you've got to find out
More.
who the bad people are and get rid of them in accordance with due process and the rule of law. And then you've got to lift up the good people. Don't go over there and burn that place down. Go over there and make it better. Do you commit to us today that you will do that?
I commit to you, if confirmed, Senator, every single day, 24/7, 365, the FBI will be the premier law enforcement agency in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll now recess for a 30-minute lunch break. We'll return at approximately 12:40, and we will resume with Senator Booker's questions.
Grassley couldn't make it the distance, I guess, on that.
He had to leave early. Takes him a little bit longer to get his lunch.
Man.
Mashed potatoes, applesauce, soft foods.
That was tough. I don't know if I can sit through record that. I really don't. I really don't know. I don't know. How do you think he did, Garrett?
I think he's doing fine. I mean, the shade that the Democrats are trying to throw, you got nothing.
Yep.
No, this is a theater. This is what it's always been. Like none of this makes any difference. None of this is going to be someone deciding what their answer is going to be. Nobody is like. There's no votes up for grab in the middle of this hearing.
No, this is all. I think the votes are pretty much whipped up at this point. I think he'll probably won't require the vice president.
But let me ask you something. There's a choir of people that sang the national anthem that were at January 6th in the DC detention facility. Can I name some of them and see if you guys know their names and then tell me what you think about them?
Please do.
Marcus Stevenson. What do you know about him?
Never heard of him.
He one time didn't flush in a public bathroom and left diarrhea stains on the porcelain. Do you support him?
Shame on. I don't know him, Senator.
Oh,
that
got
should
it.
be
Okay.
capital. That should be a capital murder trial.
Right. Yeah. David, Danskoski. You remember David Danskoski? Do you recall Danskoski? I don't know his name exactly, but do you know what he did?
He's Polish, so he did something really dumb.
He farted in the general direction of the Capitol Police, and 3 days after that, they fell down the stairs and hurt their finger. And so that police officer was injured 5 days later by his finger fall, but also a fart that happened days earlier. Do you avow those sort of violent actions of farting?
Depends on how much.
I like that I posted that I'm overwhelmed right now. I'm literally overwhelmed by how dumb the people are that run this country. And someone's like, I do not believe that this is the first time that you ever thought this. It's like, no, I didn't say it was the first time I thought it. I'm just now overwhelmed by it because I'm staring at it. These hearings are the worst thing that can be done for the American people. You just sit there and watch and you're like, how did we get John Cornyn to represent the state of Texas, which is by all accounts a great state? There are great things happening in Texas all the time. And we have that doofus who has a hard time getting through sentences because he's so old. He's John Lithgow, like on Ozempic. Once you see it, you won't unsee it. Even Ted Cruz, who I like, is now Fat Wolverine forever.
He doesn't benefit from the beard. He doesn't.
He actually does. I disagree with you. I'm
You're
4 times
beard prejudiced.
I'm 4 times more likely to like him with a beard, but he does look like chubby Wolverine. Pre-Ozempic Wolverine.
The most infuriating thing of all this stuff is that these hearings are completely unnecessary.
They're just stupid. Submit it in writing and let them do their answers in writing.
But that falls on the shoulders of the Republicans because they're in control. They could say we're not holding public hearings. We're just not going to do that.
And they would go,
but they want the public hearings.
It's a change in the history of the standard of what we do. And you'd be like, he pardoned freaking murderers. He let people out of jail that shot people point blank in the head.
Did
AR
you know
shotguns
that John
irrelevant.
Quincy Adams' cabinet had to do a televised hearing? I read about it on the internet.
It's true, actually. Yeah. I saw some early social media posts by Abraham Lincoln. They were all racist before he was able to, sterilize it.
He was on Gab.
He was on 2chan before they doubled it. It's the predecessor.
I just don't. I don't think it's worth stomaching the rest of it.
No, it's really not. These are the worst.
These
These are the worst auditions for like the crappiest Tonight takes. Honestly, the best one was what Elizabeth Warren did the other day when she was doing her Indian war cries. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I love seeing shills for big pharma come out and shill on behalf of their real constituency. That makes me actually truly happy.
Yep.
Just
And
do it.
that is why these people keep getting elected, because there's no other explanation. So it's just got to be the big money that line their pockets. Say, hey, we'll keep funding you because these are the worst that America has to offer. Granted, I guess if you would be a worthy senator, congressman, whatever, why would you want to do it? There's very few that it's like, okay, that guy seems legit. Mike Lee, I would say, is pretty decent.
But what does he really do? He just keeps his feet warm.
Exactly. He doesn't. What does he do? What do any of them do?
Mhm.
I don't really know.
He's got a base Twitter account that's got some like snarky teenager running it.
His Twitter account, they puts out some decent stuff.
Sometimes.
All right.
Sometimes.
Well, I don't want to see googly eyes. Let's call it. Let's say that the half day is good.
People are like, don't leave us.
Right?
No, it left us. We were always here. I got to go argue with people that are still in the FBI that think they were egregiously harmed and deserve millions of dollars for keeping their job.
All right, Garrett, we got to throw it to you, man. What's your final thoughts of the day?
Man, my final thoughts. Cash will be confirmed. I just want to know. I just want to get to the vote. I don't know when it'll be, but this was this is just a useless event at this point. And he said something to the effect of, I think he was talking to Blumenthal or one of them. This shows how divided we are at this point. It absolutely does. It absolutely does. There's no decorum for the witness, and I guarantee you, when he went to these people's offices in the last couple weeks, it wasn't like it is today. But now they're coming out and, did you tweet this? Did you tweet that? Screw you. Screw you. Screw you all. That's
your biblical worldview for the day. Screw you, people. That comes from Leviticus. All right. So we are in the fortunate position today on the American Radicals podcast that we don't have to sit there and take the second half of it like we did about 2 years ago. So we're just going to cut it. Thanks again, Kyle, for joining us today, offering your thoughts. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back Saturday, 10:30 standard fare here, rumble.com/amradpod. Guys, make sure you monitor this. And as always, fight with Cash. He'll make it on through. And see you next time, guys.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.